Here we go. It is the NFL Deeper Dive presented by none other than FantasyDraft.com, home of the No Rake NFL contests. We'll get into that in just a moment. I'm Dave Loughran, with me, Ben Rasa, and the number one ranked DFS player in the world, Adam Baker, also known as Awesemo himself. Boys, how we doing today?
Better than you. You just called him Adam Baker. That's neither here nor there. So we're hanging in just fine.
I meant Alex Scher.
Yeah, much better.
Well, yeah, there we go.
I do too many shows. Give me a break. What's happening, boys? 10 games today. Injury news flowing in. Got a good one on our hands, Alex.
That's right, man. Yeah, I thought all the injuries were in, but all of a sudden now the Bears got this easy matchup versus Jeff Driscoll and the Lions. Should be interesting spots today.
Yes, it should. Ben, how we feeling?
Feeling good. Just busy. College basketball back in full swing. But I like this 10-game slate. Probably my perfect NFL. Not too many, not too few. So ready to dive in.
I agree. This is the wheelhouse.
Yep.
Feels good. All right, let's dive into it. And by the way, got a whole lot of stuff coming up on today's NFL programming here on youtube.com/awesemo. So you'll want to stick around for all of it. But first, let's kick it off with a few of these games. We'll go one by one, 10 games to tackle. We'll start with Detroit and Chicago. Ben, Matthew Stafford has I believe it's a fracture in his back. He actually wanted to play, which is pretty remarkable in its own right, but he's week to week now. And now we've got none other than Jeff Driscoll getting the nod here under center for the Detroit Lions, going up against the Chicago Bears. It's been a Bears team that really just hasn't been good at all. The offense has been terrible. But I think we can start with the Bears offense. David Montgomery here, they're 7-point favorites now, 23-point implied total, 39-point over-under, but that's because the Lions have a 16-point total. I was wavering a bit on Montgomery, and I'm sure it'll come back to bite me because now I don't want to say all in, but pretty close. If there's ever an opportunity to actually get David Montgomery in motion, in terms of motion by meaning going forward and not backwards, it feels like this would be the spot against the Detroit team that likely isn't going to be able to move the ball all that well.
Yeah, it's funny. I come from the complete opposite side. So I was basically all in on Montgomery before this happened. And now not that I'm deterred. It's just frustrating. A lot of people naturally are going to hop on because this is the perfect setup.
Sure.
We've seen the carries in recent weeks increase. And you said it, 7-point favorite at home. Their plan's got to be limit Trubisky from making mistakes. We saw Josh Jacobs last week against the Lions absolutely torch them. I don't see why it would be any different with Montgomery. So at this reasonable price tag, he is the easy starting point in this game. Yes,
I think so. The only thing that I don't want to say worries me, but I do have some concerns about is actually, I wouldn't say concern, but Driscoll's actually he's a lot more mobile than Matthew Stafford. Do you think that has any impact on this game and how the Bears game planned for Matthew Stafford, assuming they did?
Maybe a little, but at the same time, I mean, this was a team after Kerryon went down, it was starting to get back to where Stafford was dropping back 45, 50 times. It felt like every week. Maybe Driscoll can keep them honest in some regards, but at the same time, I think this is a pretty bad spot for the Lions across the board.
I'm with you. How about you, Alex?
Yeah, I think David Montgomery, honestly, I feel like this news doesn't move the needle that much because it's not like he was going to be out there facing Matthew Stafford. But just based on the price tag, I mean, he's a terrific play this week. This is a $5K price tag for a guy who gets 2/3 of the rushing work on the team. And he's 10.9 on fantasy drafts. I mean, compared to other value options at running back, like Kalen Ballage and Jaylen Samuels, maybe some other guys, he stands out head and shoulders above the rest.
Okay. Do you have interest in the rest of this Chicago Bears team and the Allen Robinsons or, dare I say, the Taylor Gabriels? Anything you like outside of Montgomery?
I'm interested in Robinson. I think that he's the only one kind of having a good year other than Montgomery, and I might take some shots there, but if he's contrarian, I think it could be a nice spot.
How much do you like, if at all, the Bears' defense today against Driscoll and the Lions?
I don't think it's that much of a difference compared to Stafford, because Driscoll, in his one season that he played, he didn't really throw picks at a high rate. And I assume that the Lions will try to have him not slinging the ball too much. So I don't think it's that great for the Bears' defense.
Ben?
I think it raises their floor for like a cash environment because they should give up less points, but I think it lowers their ceiling because he's way, as Alex just said, he's way less apt to be making crazy throws. Like Stafford slings it. So if it goes bad there, it could have been a lot better, but it's hard not to like them, as a reasonable option anyway. For
sure. Do you have any interest, Alex, on the opposite side of this game? Any skill players for the Lions?
Let me check. I mean, Ty Johnson would have been kind of interesting before the news. He's only $12 on Yahoo, so maybe worth a shot there. With Trey Carson, Ty Johnson, saw more work last week, so I think there's some reason to maybe take a stab on him.
Okay, Ben, anything for Detroit?
Not really. I mean, I get the appeal if you're saying maybe Driscoll can get enough where I can build just a different type of lineup. You can jam in multiple top-end options. But for me, there's just way too much risk across the board. So not much to say about the Lions.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you here. There's really nothing that you feel compelled to get to whatsoever. Let me stay with you, Ben. Baltimore and Cincinnati. You joined me on Awesemo Radio yesterday, Sirius XM Fantasy, Sirius 210 XM87. Check it out, 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern on Saturday, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday. And you mentioned, we talked college football for the most part, but you had mentioned to me, oh, by the way, did you see what Burrows came home to? Did you see that video?
I did not.
Oh, I'll have to send it to you. Just
please do. Yeah.
Thousands and thousands of people behind the gate waiting.
As he should have. What a boss.
Yeah. I'm assuming he had a decent night once he got home.
Certainly better than mine and most other people out there. Yeah.
Baltimore and Cincinnati. You had pointed out, though, that Baltimore is playing on a short week and the Cincinnati Bengals are coming off of a bye. Now, they do have Finley at the quarterback position. They've been completely anemic offensively, and Lamar Jackson has seemed virtually unstoppable here. So are you still feeling that this game could be not an upset in terms of Cincinnati winning outright, but them covering and maybe Baltimore not being offensively as explosive as usual?
I do. I really don't think this is the best spot for the Ravens. You mentioned short week, playing a team coming off a bye, on the road, division team. They've played them already. A lot of things not to love here. And that's not to say that guys like Lamar Jackson are not in a reasonable spot to, he absolutely crushed Cincinnati on the ground in the first time they played. There's no reason he can't do that again. But I wouldn't be stunned to see this be kind of a grinded out, ugly game where, yes, Baltimore ultimately gets the win, but I don't think this is going to be a demolition by any stretch of the imagination.
Okay. So I personally still don't know how I don't get to a lot of Lamar. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm assuming a lot of people won't, because pairing him with other players isn't really the greatest thing. Mark Andrews only played 32% of snaps last week. Marcus Brown is questionable, but I still think this is a really, really quality spot. Now, I hear everything you're saying. It makes sense. But just a couple things on Andrews the Marcus Brown that get me really excited for a spot like this, at least for his upside, right? You want to talk about this game. He's a volatile player. There's no question there. And that to me is concerning. But, nobody's allowing a more yards per completion than the Bengals this year, 13.3 yards per completion, which is insane. They've already allowed like 38 passes of 20-plus yards, 7 of 40-plus yards on the season. They've been just decimated in that respect. And I think this is a spot where Marcus Brown can replicate something like what we saw in the beginning of the year. So, I'm a little bit different there. And mostly because when you look at ownership on some of these guys, Marcus Brown right now coming in at 4%, while a guy like Christian Kirk, who is obviously in a good spot, but also someone that could give you, 8 receptions for 40 yards, is up there at 21%. That stands out to me as a tournament play where I'm willing to take that risk.
I totally, Marquise Brown is someone we know the ceiling is going to be there. And when you get low ownership, you don't have to allocate a ton to get leverage. I think it's very reasonable. To me, though, it's just a spot. We'll have to see with Lamar. You can run him solo, of course. But other than that, I'm not on Andrews, and I don't think I'm going to get to much Ingram either.
Okay. How about you, Alex? What are you doing with and I agree with you on Ingram, Ben. The touch counts, the upside in terms of opportunity just isn't there at his price. What are you doing, Alex, with the Baltimore Ravens?
As far as Lamar Jackson, I think this is a classic cash game quarterback where Baltimore is probably going to have a pretty good day. If they dominate this game, that'll limit Lamar Jackson's fantasy production to some extent because they'll probably run the ball until they're up, maybe 1 or 2 touchdowns. And then because there's higher risk of injury and that kind of play, they'll probably lean more on the running backs. And I think that limits his upside to some extent. But I don't hate a stack. I think it might be a little bit overowned. On my top stack school on the site, I have Baltimore. We have Lamar Jackson is owned at about 10%, and I have him as part of the top stack about 6% of the time. So I think there's potential there, but not as high as some other spots. And as far as Marquise Brown, I really like that $5,300 price tag on FanDuel. That seems way too low for his talent level, where usually at $5,300 you can't get anyone who's like good at all.
For sure. Thoughts on the rest of this offense? Anybody else you want to touch on before we go to the other side?
I think that Mark Ingram's a little bit expensive, given that he doesn't really catch many passes. I know he's had some big games getting touchdowns, but I'm not really seeing anything. Mark Andrews, he didn't play as much as we would have liked last week. And his price is pretty high in a spot where they might not need to pass the ball that much. So I'm not loving him either.
What about Cincinnati? It's going to be a tough spot for somebody like Tyler Boyd. Marlon Humphrey has been spectacular at shadowing opposing teams' top wide receivers. He started doing that early in the season. And it's just been a hell of a time trying to get any production off of him. 0.26 fantasy points per route thrown at, according to Pro Football Focus, which is just a crazy number. And we're really seeing that teams are just deciding not to target him against him nearly as much with how good he's been. But does that open things up? Because there's still, and of course Finley is your guy, so that's ugly to start. But does that open things up for an Alex Erickson or an Auden Tate? The biggest problem though is like Jimmy Smith is back, and now you have Marcus Peters too. This secondary looks pretty frightening right now.
Yeah, I think this is a classic spot. Sorry, I might have jumped it back.
No, not at all.
I think that this is a classic spot where there's a lot of volume to go around because Cincinnati is going to have to be slinging the ball. Baltimore's defense has been about average this year so far, so I don't hate their prospects. And Ryan Finley is probably a little worse than Andy Dalton, but it's hard to be a lot worse. So I'm still interested in some of these receivers because they're pretty cheap, and there are a lot of studs to pay up for on the slate.
Okay. Yeah, Ben, I'll go to you here. I don't disagree that – well, first of all, I will have some of these guys because they're cheap. Likely going to be more Tate and maybe a little bit of Erickson just because they're inexpensive. But, Ben, I do think getting Jimmy Smith back is a pretty notable difference now that you've got Marlon Humphrey, Jimmy Smith, and Marcus Peters in that secondary.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, the price keeps these guys afloat somewhat, and we'll see what happens. Obviously, I have to mention Joe Mixon. Does he get a bump in terms of easy short passes? Is that going to go to Gio? First time against the Ravens, no surprise. He did actually nothing on the ground. I'm not sure what he can get going. The price is in the gutter as it should be. You have him, and then you have Tyler Eifert, who's another guy who saw 9 targets last week. That was a big jump in what he's usually seeing. I may get to a sliver of these guys, but pinpointing a single Bengal that I'm really interested in is just not happening.
Okay. I think Tate would probably be the guy for me. Now, of course, Boyd is inexpensive too. The thing that stands out to me with Tate is I don't think he's just going to stop getting a lot of looks because Finley's in there, because you could argue that with really any of these receivers, that the role could change or stay the same. But when you look at a guy in Marcus Peters, who I think Tate's going to see a lot of today, it is not a good spot. But Peters is also a risk taker, and he will make mistakes at times. So I think that would be one reason why I could see myself getting there. But, if I'm playing Jackson and Marcus Brown, and I do have a decent amount of those lineups with just Jackson and Marcus Brown, I'm not compelled to run it back. I don't think that's a necessity. So I don't want to go out overboard with certain players on this team just because I need to get somebody opposing my Lamar Jackson lineups. That to me seems unnecessary. By the way, Auden Tate has a 5-inch height advantage and a 30-pound weight advantage on Peters. So maybe you try and get him some just contested balls, throw him up there and see what he can do. It all comes down to Finley. Do you guys want to move on to the next game?
I'll throw out one pick here because the knock against Alex Erickson is as a wide receiver 3. He doesn't play in 2 wide receiver sets. So if they're playing from behind and you have Lamar Jackson, then going to Erickson could be a reasonable play.
Okay. Cleveland, Buffalo. Alex, the Cleveland Browns, it's been terrible. Ben, of course, I'll get to you. We'll talk your brownies.
Not my brownies.
Not anymore, right?
Not anymore. That's right.
41.5 over under, 22-point implied total for Cleveland, 19.5 for Buffalo. Browns are 2.5-point favorites here. It's kind of an interesting spot because Buffalo's run defense has actually taken some hits. They allowed 127 rushing yards to Adrian Peterson and company in a game where they were comfortably ahead the entire game. And then 218 rushing yards to Jordan Howard and Miles Sanders and Boston Scott. So they have seen some breakdowns in the run defense recently. I mentioned that because Nick Chubb is, of course, an elite running back who coming off a tough game, but you would think the reason that they would stay competitive or take a lead here. Odell Beckham is going to be matched up against Tre'Davious White, who has been absolutely spectacular. Or at least you would assume that he'll see a lot of snaps against White. I think most of them, if not all. And then it just, maybe Jarvis Landry, but it feels like a spot where Nick Chubb, they'll try to get him as much as possible involved. What are your thoughts here with the Browns actually being favored by a couple of points at home? Alex.
Oh, my bad. So I think that was a little surprising that the Browns are favored. It kind of shows that the record isn't really that great an indication of how good a team is. I'm not huge on any particular Browns today. In my initial projections, I thought maybe I'd go to Nick Chubb. But with Kareem Hunt coming back, that muddies the waters a little bit for me. The coach has been saying he's going to get a sizable workload, and I think he's certainly better than Dontrell Hilliard. So I expect Nick Chubb's workload to go down a little bit and maybe a little high-hand approach in Cleveland. And then, Buffalo's pass D is pretty good this year, so I'm a little bit worried about Baker's performance because he hasn't been that good at throwing the ball in the first place this year.
Ben, are you worried about Nick Chubb?
A little bit. I mean, just because there's an unknown with Kareem Hunt, but as you said right off the top, I'm not going to say they should have a lead, but either way, they should attack the Bills on the ground. That is
they have to, right?
You really have to. Maybe some Jarvis underneath, and I totally get that. But at the end of the day, Chubb is the guy that they have to lean on here in a game. I mean, it's beyond need at this point. Like they're pretty much sunk. But if they're not sunk, these are games they're certainly going to need. And Chubb is the type of guy that he can handle the workload. Kareem Hunt, maybe it does impact, but to me, more likely than not, he just kind of negates what Hilliard would be doing. Maybe he takes a little more, but Chubb should have plenty of room to get there.
So you have the running back position. I actually discussed this with Sal Vetri last night. He joined us on Sirius as well. You got on DraftKings, Chubb, 7K, Ingram, 71, Lev Bell, 69. Lev said he's playing. Marlin Mac, 7,000. Aaron Jones, 74. So all of these guys within $500 of each other. Where would you, in terms of prioritizing or ranking, where would you put Nick Chubb among those guys?
Well, that's what you're really talking about. The opportunity cost on this slate is pretty immense, in my opinion, in that like upper mid-range running back. And with the Kareem Hunt situation, I don't love this game as a whole. It has a low over-under. I think he has a decent floor, but for tournaments, there are a couple other guys, ones that you mentioned, and we'll get to in depth, that I have ahead of him.
Okay. How about the passing game here? Odell Beckham, like I said, Tre'Davious White's very good. And then, of course, guys like Jarvis Landry might have a bit of an easier time here. But what do you make of the passing game, Ben?
Yeah, I don't have much interest. Jarvis Landry, someone, if I have a team and it fits kind of that price point, I think it's fine. Full PPR, of course, he gets a boost working underneath. But it's just so hard with, not to step back, but they would have been my Brownies if they drafted Josh Allen. That's what they should have done. But they didn't. They went Baker. I am not a Baker guy by any stretch. And I think it shows that it's really hard to back this passing attack.
Yeah, it is. Are you interested in the passing attack at all, Alex?
No, I'm not really interested because the players are just too priced up. Odell Beckham is still kind of in the mid-range, even though his performance this year hasn't been great. If I was going to take a stab on him, FanDuel's price looks the best. Jarvis Landry maybe on Yahoo at 14 is pretty nice, but with the team total of 22, I'm not super bullish about the offense here. And there's a lot of good offenses on the slate that you can go to.
What about flip to the other side with the Bills? Devin Singletary in your plans today, Alex? Anybody from the Bills here with a sub 20 implied total?
I think Singletary is kind of interesting, but not my favorite play on the slate. His price on fantasy draft at 9,500 is pretty appealing. And last week he got so much of the workload over Frank Gore, so that was a little bit of a surprise. If I was to go to one guy here, I'm kind of interested in John Brown, especially on Yahoo and FanDuel, where he's pretty cheap. Just a big playmaker, and they are the underdogs in this game, so they might have to throw the ball out.
Okay, Ben, anything for Buffalo for you?
Not really. Yeah, I get the merit of playing Singletary if he's going to see that type of work. But to me, this is a game. I honestly like the Browns defense a little bit. They're very cheap. Josh Allen, although I'm a fan, he clearly can turn the ball over at a rapid rate. So maybe a flyer here or there with a guy like Singletary or Smokey Brown, but not a priority.
Browns are my second highest owned defense on DraftKings right now. And what are they, 2,500, I think? Yep. It's hard for me to get away from that. So.
Yeah. They should get pressure on Allen, no problem with that front. At home, possibly leading. It's a pretty good spot.
Yep. Yeah, I have a lot of them. So I don't think it's really that big of a surprise, being that they are that discounted. Talking about this next one on our list, New Orleans and Atlanta. Alex, the second highest total on the slate goes to this game, 51.5 points. 32.8 implied total for the Saints is the highest of any team going this week. 14-point favorites. No one is a bigger favorite either. So, obviously a lot to break down for the Saints side of this one. Falcons, as I've said throughout the week, 18.8 implied total. I still think that is low for a team that is going to chuck it and probably even in garbage time finds ways to score in the dome in a divisional matchup, but I guess we'll find out. They're 14-point dogs. What are you doing with the Saints here? And I mentioned to you, both of you guys before the show, that, I keep getting a lot of Alvin Kamara, and the only concern I have about him is, like, in a game where they're 14-point favorites at home, and Alvin Kamara is returning from a 2-week hiatus. And then I think they had a bye last week.
Yep.
But So he's been out for a while, seems to be perfectly fine. No injury designation heading into today. The concern I have, though, is given how much they're favored, how easily they should win this game, would it just make sense to give Latavius Murray a good amount of work too with how he's played? Or do they run the ball so often that it doesn't matter because both of them get enough? I just think there's a lot of different ways this could go. And while I have a lot of Kamara, it does concern me a little bit. Alex?
Yeah, I think that it's definitely concerning with because this game could easily get out of hand. The New Orleans offense is pretty strong, and Atlanta's defense isn't that good. So I think that it will be really favorable when they're trying to run up points, but there will be a certain point in the game probably where they start leaning more on Murray as the game gets more out of hand for Atlanta, and that kind of limits Kamara's upside a little bit. On the other hand, if you do take Kamara, I think that maybe throw in Julio or Hooper or running it back, a little mini stack running back versus opposing wide receiver. That could be smart because Atlanta's going to have to put up some points for Kamara to really put up an outlier score.
Okay. Yeah, Ben, your thoughts on Kamara?
Yeah, I'm in a similar – I mean, Michael Thomas clearly the safer option in terms of the two big Saints. There's no doubt in my mind about that. Kamara's an interesting guy. We saw, if you step way back, he was getting there in ridiculous fashion with limited touches. Then the volume increased and he became a staple. Now, so it's a type of guy you can still get bailed out if you don't see the volume. But with the ownership that is probably going to come with him, I'm a little skeptical because I agree with you. I think Latavius should have a big role, especially if this game goes according to script. So he's not a priority. I'm in total alignment with Alex. If I use him, I may actually go to like Julio and Matt Ryan and those guys and try to stack up the game and hope that New Orleans really needs to press him a bit to win the game.
Yeah, I hear you. And I just think, Julio Jones right now coming in at 8% on DraftKings. It feels to me like this entire Falcons team is getting no love. And I understand why they're not popular, but I also don't think that it's crazy to see a spot where Atlanta does manage to put points on the board. Julio does find ways to, beat Marshawn Lattimore because he's that good. It just feels like one of these divisional spots where Atlanta's a terrible team with a bad defense, but their offense still has some serious firepower, Ben. And, Julio Jones racking up 150 with a score or two is not out of the question any week, no matter what.
No doubt. And, Sanu is, of course, no longer there. You've got guys like Ridley. I mean, I'll pass it back to you guys with this Russell Gage character. Sounds like a, Mortal Kombat-esque guy. I'm not really there, but if he's going to see 9 targets once again in a positive game script, he could be a way to get some cheap exposure to the game.
Yeah, what do you think on him, Alex?
Yeah, really expecting a fatality here. But nah.
You're saying he's gonna kill the Saints?
Yeah. Maybe we can get some finish him playing on the PA. But all right. Well, I mean, the thing is, there's 3 guys that are much higher volume targets ahead of him, so it's hard to really land on Gage, in my opinion.
Okay. Quickly, how much Michael Thomas are you going to have, Alex? Like, is he going to be one of your highest owned players? And then your final thoughts on the Falcons.
I mean, Thomas is having an incredible year. I think that on DraftKings and fantasy draft, he's pretty underpriced. Well, he's pretty underpriced on FanDuel too, but that PPR gives him the potential to have a huge game even without getting into the end zone or something. So I think that it's pretty appealing, but the same thing where if the game's not super competitive, you got to worry that maybe the production stops.
Ben, same question for you.
In cash, you should just play him. That's step 1. In tournaments, I'm going to have a healthy amount. I will say specifically in like single entry, smaller amount of fields, you might see him 75% owned. And some of those, maybe you can try to get away. Now, he has such an incredible floor. You never really get paid off to the fullest extent. But if you want to pivot, That's the one area maybe I'll look to, but my God, he's the most consistent guy at home in one of the best scripts. So it's hard to imagine him not at least giving you, at worst, a middling performance.
Okay. Yeah, I hear you. It's tough not to really like this game. Okay. I want to ask you this. Final thoughts then, Ben, on Alvin Kamara. Where do you, barring any like significant news, where do you see yourself coming in on Kamara, given the many directions this game can take?
I see myself coming in probably underweight, and when I target him, it's going to be in game stacks where I have some Falcons, and I'm really hoping for a big performance, because I just don't know why. As a one-off, to me, doesn't make a ton of sense, just because you're going to need him to bust a couple. I don't think the volume will be there in a lot of these narratives.
Okay. Hey, Alex, did you know that Fantasy Draft is the only rake-free daily fantasy site out there?
No, man. No, this is the first I'm hearing of this rake-free business. Can you explain?
I'm so glad you asked. Did you know they're bringing the heat again too, with the $300,000 guaranteed rake-free contest called the Hooters Main Event? I think you did. It's the largest and only rake-free contest of its kind you're going to find for Week 10. And remember, only on Fantasy Draft are 100% of entry fees paid to the contest winners. So I'm sure you're clamoring, asking, how do I get in on this? I'll tell you. You sign up at fantasydraft.com with the referral code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, and you'll get a free 7-day trial membership. That's right. They got the heat, the fire, the $300,000 guaranteed rake-free contest, the Hooters Main Event, and only here at fantasydraft.com will all of your entry fees get paid back to the contest winners. Sign up, fantasydraft.com with the referral code AWESEMO, and you'll receive a free 7-day trial membership. That is fantasydraft.com, sponsor of the NFL Deeper Dive. Boys, do you want to move on to the next game?
I will throw out I just built my fantasy draft lineups for the main event here, and I ended up with a really concerning amount of Drew Brees and Matt Ryan. Like, I'm scrolling through my list and I'm having trouble finding any other guy.
A really concerning amount. I love it. All right. Let's talk about the Jets and the Giants, Ben. This is the type of game that you would sit down and watch and just thoroughly enjoy. You love bad sports.
I really do. It's amazing. That's
really
what I love about basketball. It's just
you
so
really
bad.
do. I mean, that's not an insult. You thoroughly enjoy watching bad sports. The Maharashi says, Laffy, you have to invest in something and get on Shark Tank with that pitch. All right. I will. I've always wanted to invent something. I just come up empty every time, man.
I got ideas. After the show, we'll talk, Laffy.
Yeah. All right, man. You want to go see Cuban and Mr. Wonderful with me?
Let's do it.
All right. Dude, I can only imagine you standing in front of them.
Yeah,
I don't know you'd make it through the door.
Probably not, but that's neither here nor there.
Okay. Oh, man. 44.5 point total. The Giants 3-point favorites. This kind of just exemplifies how bad this Jets team is, Ben. Giants 23.8 implied total. Pretty solid. 20.8 for the Jets. Let's start with the road team in the New York Giants. How are you approaching them with no Sterling Shepard, no Evan Ingram? Their two top passing game targets being out today.
Yeah, so immediately, of course, I think Golden Tate, you got to look to him. He's in a great spot. The targets have been there regardless, and he's someone you know that Daniel Jones is going to look to. I wouldn't be stunned to see the targets creep over double digits again. He's had that in 2 out of the last 3 weeks. Sizable floor. The price is reasonable against a Jets team that is just bad across the board. Saquon is the tough one for me. You're getting a sizable discount now between him and McCaffrey, but at the same time, it's just not the same production. So I'm kind of indifferent to the play. I'm interested to see what you guys say. Really, Golden Tate was the one who stood out for this Giants team, and he is the focal point of what I plan to do on this game.
Okay. How much did you touch on Barkley? So I was reading the chat.
I just said, it's interesting because now him and McCaffrey are starting to separate price-wise, but at the same time, their production is separating as well. So I don't have a really strong take. He's kind of in a dead range between paying all the way up and bumping to the Marlin Macs, Aaron Joneses of the world.
Yeah, I thought I would get a lot more Barkley right now. I mean, I'm going to crunch again, but I only got like 8% right now, which to me is really surprising. And I don't know, I was hoping I'd get more, but it hasn't been the case. Alex, what are your thoughts on Barkley? And then talk about this passing game for the Giants. Again, it's pretty important to note that Shepard and Ingram being out is going to force the hand. Is it going to be more Barkley in the passing game? Is it going to be, Rhett Ellison? Are we going to see Golden Tate get peppered with targets? How do you think this game goes for the Giants offense?
Yeah, first of all, I'll mention throw out your splits, because a home game versus a home game here, like, you gotta love that.
Oh yeah.
So
there's two groups of miserable fans.
Yeah.
You can't even talk shit on each other. It's just like, yeah, I know. I can only imagine the atmosphere of that game. Go ahead.
I'm pretty sure there won't be any fans getting beaten up in parking lots today. Yeah. Anyway, I think
they might be asking each other to beat them up.
They might feel beaten up.
Yeah.
But I think Barkley, I mean, he's not as good with Daniel Jones at QB, I think, because more mobile quarterback, doesn't check down quite as much. But he does get a little bit of a bump with that Ingram and Shepard out. And he makes a nice alternative to a guy like Kamara, who is in a game that might not be as competitive. So I'm kind of feeling some Barkley here. And then as far as pass catchers, Slayton's price has come up a little bit, but yeah, I'm not really seeing any site where he'd be that good. But Tate is high enough volume to be in play on any site. Okay,
Ben, what are you thinking on the other side of this one when it comes to this New York Jets team? Le'Veon Bell, I think it was Instagram, said he's going to play. I tell you what, he actually has done a pretty good job endearing himself to the Jets fan base. The guy's busting his ass every week, and it would be very easy for him to just sit this game out with an injury on a team that isn't doing anything offensively and has really just made him look terrible on the field. But here he is saying he's going to play, and you would think that he's going, max effort. I just don't know how much that matters. What are your thoughts on Le'Veon Bell here?
No, I mean, it's similar to last week where I really liked him there, and the targets came back, which was priority number one for me. But he's having difficulty finding the end zone, and he's surrounded by just clowns at this point with Darnold and co. So it's not a bad matchup, of course. And I do think, him getting 25 touches is live when you look at his dual threat ability. Question is just, can they keep it honest where the Giants have to do other things, whether it's Robbie Anderson or somebody. I don't know if Herndon's going to play. Lev has it's just a tough sell with the way the Jets are playing right now. So I'm not going to look to Darnold, but I think you can play Le'Veon if he's going to continue to see this type of volume.
Okay. Do you have interest in the passing game?
Not really. I mean, Robbie Anderson is someone that we know is more of a boom or bust, where you have Crowder, who got all the work last week. Outside of maybe just looking, if I have, say, Daniel Jones and some of these Giants running it back a little differently, I don't think there's as much risk reward here with these Jets pass catchers.
Okay. I don't want to backpedal 1 second. I forgot to ask you guys, because of the price point, just quickly for you, Ben, and then Alex, do you guys have any interest in Ted Ginn Jr.?
So I thought it was an interesting spot. It's just that Traquan, I believe, is back as well. I'm not sure how much that impacts Ted Ginn's. If you're going to stack it up with Breeze, he's someone you can look to, but other than that, I don't.
Alex?
I'm not really feeling him. The price seems kind of low at 3,700, but it's just not someone who gets targeted very much.
Okay, just wanted to make sure here. Alex, talk to me about Lev Bell and the Jets.
I'll backtrack a little bit too here. I'll mention Rhett Ellison is the min price across the industry here, so he's actually a reasonable play on today's slate. So I think Lev Bell, his price has really come down since the start of the year. It's the lowest on FanDuel and Fantasy Draft. So in those sites in particular, I think he's a nice play, but just someone who gets a big workload and a competitive game. So you gotta really like it.
Okay. Anything else from this game for either? Actually, well, Alex, talk to me about Bell and the Jets.
So the wide receivers, I'm thinking maybe Crowder on Yahoo at $14 is a little bit underpriced, but these guys aren't that cheap, to be honest, and they're not going to stand out as far as like a good value play. But wide receivers have so much variance that maybe you take some stabs just because no one else will be on them.
Okay. Reached we're past the midway point, actually. Is there anything to add for this game, Ben, that we haven't talked about? Two bad teams, but fantasy value can be hidden in and if you just look in the right places. I think that you are going to get some decent games here, but it's a difficult one. So who would your top play from this game be? Would it be Tate? Would it be Bell, Barkley?
It would be Tate when you factor everything in. It certainly, the Giants to me are in a more advantageous position. I feel more comfortable with them just as a whole. But like you said, when you have two bad teams, the range of outcomes is gigantic, and that can be something you can embrace from a fantasy perspective.
Okay, fair enough. Favorite player from this game, Alex?
I'll go with Bell. I think that when you have that kind of volume, it gives you a lot of upside if the team overperforms. So I think there's some potential there.
Okay. How about Tampa Bay, Arizona? Well, we'll start with you, Alex. Jameis Winston is going to be pretty popular today again, and I think for pretty good reason. He has been solid. His pass catchers, where the ball is going to, which makes a pretty big difference every week. This game has the highest total of any game on the slate at 52. 28.5 total for the Bucs, 23.5 for the Arizona Cardinals. They're 5-point dogs in Tampa Bay. Talk to me about Winston and well, you know what? If you want to start with Ronald Jones, we can do that too. Bruce Arians said he's been explosive and consistent. We've been watching different Ronald Jones, I think, because he hasn't been explosive and he hasn't been consistent. But if he would have, I'd have had a lot more respect for his comment if he said, Peyton Barber's just terrible. And then it would have made a lot more sense because, of course, start Ronald Jones, which is what he said. He's the starter from now on. But we can't pretend that Ronald Jones has been this electric running back. He's averaging less than 4 yards per carry on the season. I think he has 2 carries above 20 yards on 49, or it might be more than 49 attempts. He's okay. But here we go in a game where they're favored, and he's going to be pretty popular. So how are you getting to Ronald Jones?
I think that Jones stands out as great value on today's slate. I mean, when you go down to that price tag, you're looking at maybe a Kalen Ballage as your alternative, and Jones is on a team that's going to do much better. But the downside with Jones is that it's a 3-man committee with Ogunbowale and Barber. So usually I'm not that interested in those situations because the workload is spread out too much. But in this case, I think because it's such a good matchup versus the Cardinals who play at a fast pace, I think that Barber makes a nice play.
Okay. Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in your vote. Ronald Jones is not good, but he's better than what they have.
Right.
If he's going to see that volume at home, favorite, I totally get it. You do have some other reasonable pay down running backs if you don't want to go there, but he is someone I'm going to look to. He makes a nice leverage play off the other Bucs. If you think, they should be popular, if you think there's some way that Tampa can control this game on the ground, maybe it negates, Winston, Godwin, Evans to an extent. But this is a Tampa offense with a great matchup across the board and a fast-paced game that it's hard not to like these guys.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to have some Jones. I just can't – I'm not going to pretend that I love him. But just the product of the slate and his price point, I am getting a decent amount. I think you pretty much have to end up on some Ronald Jones here. Ben, Jameis Winston, his go-to guys, clearly Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. His number 3 is Brashad Perriman and O.J. Howard or Cameron Brate, no matter who's getting the snaps, really have not been utilized much at all. That's what always makes this an interesting team stack because we know where the ball is going when Winston throws it 40 times a game.
Absolutely. Now, the receivers, of course, are price premium, but they can get there. And what you're going to need, is a back and forth type game, maybe a couple of turnovers from Jameis that can open it up, to be honest. So it's just a good spot for the Bucs offense. Did you mention O.J. Howard?
I just said that whether he's going to play, but I'm saying whether or not he's there, they hate using him. Although it is against an Arizona team that's been gashed by tight ends. I just don't know how much it matters.
I'm buying low on him. I know the risk is immense. But if there is ever a spot, this is a guy that he has all the tools you need. We've seen it, and you're absolutely right. They haven't been utilizing him at all. Arizona is the perfect matchup. The price is dormant. The ownership is not what it would nearly be if he had any signs of life. I think that's an interesting way to get, if you're running 3-man buck stacks, using him instead of doubling up with Godwin and Evans is a way to be a little different.
Okay. Thoughts on these receivers and just the passing game in general for Tampa, Alex?
Yeah, I think this is probably my favorite game stack of the week. And it feels bad because it's such a chalky game, but I just feel like your odds of winning if you have Winston, Godwin, and Evans on the same lineup are so much higher.
Yeah.
Because supposing Arizona can put up a fight and Jameis Winston has an outlier day, like the production is so concentrated in those two guys that that combination gives you a really great chance to win a tournament. I mean, it's going to be highly owned though, so take that into account. But I really like that, especially because Arizona plays at a fast pace and they're not a good defense. That just opens up the opportunity a lot.
So I'll preface this with I do have a good amount of Christian Kirk, but just to try and be fair and mention both sides of this, like on the one side, of course, Christian Kirk is in a game against a bottom-ranked Tampa Bay secondary pass defense that's been just bludgeoned in almost every game, right? Almost every week we see it. No team's allowing more passing yards per game than the Tampa Bay Bucks. But it gets, when you look at a Pro Football Focus grade, Football Outsiders DVOA metric, it's all bad. Okay, it's all bad. However, I do want to at least talk about the fact that Christian Kirk doesn't have a touchdown on the season. He's 64th in deep ball percentage among 78 receivers with at least 5 deep targets. He's 50th in yards per reception among 54 receivers with at least 40 targets. So like the great part about it is highest total of the slate, 90+% snaps guy. He's going to play 90+% of snaps every week. He leads the team in targets per game with almost 9. Tampa Bay's pass defense is terrible. And then the bad is that, he could be one of these guys that finishes with 8 receptions for 45 scoreless yards, and you're pretty disappointed by it. But like I said, I'm certainly going to have Christian Kirk. I just think, in tournaments, there's that question of whether or not the ceiling is there. I'm hoping it is for my sake, but what are you doing here?
It's interesting because I think the ceiling is there. I feel pretty comfortable saying that.
Okay.
But man, this Arizona team is one that I'm a little confused on exactly what their identity is. Just take Kyler, for example. His first 3 games, 54, 40, and 43 pass attempts. His last 3 games, 21, 33, and 24.
Yeah, and their seconds per snap has gone way up. They're slowing it down for sure.
They absolutely are slowing it down, and they still play at a fast pace, but this is just not the team that I thought it was going to be per se, and we really haven't seen the massive explosion from this offense. Now, we know he has dual threat ability, and then we know Kirk is, like you said, he's going to be on the field the entire time. So I feel pretty comfortable saying it's still there. But, man, I thought this was going to be a team that week in and week out was going to be doing what we saw in those early couple weeks, and that is just not the case.
Okay. So
what it means for me is that Kirk still holds some value because the Cardinals, I think, possess that. And in a game like this, I think it's still a very prevalent game script. But at the same time, this was a spot, no joke, that if you would have told me this was, say, like week 4, this would be a possible lock for me where I would just plug in this game, different variations, and go from there because I absolutely love it on the surface. But when you dig down, there are other ways that this could play out, and it hurts the Cardinals pass catchers and Kyler.
Okay. Fair enough. And by the way, I'm getting more Kirk than I feel comfortable with, but
Same.
It's just happening. So what are you going to do? Alex, talk to me about the Cardinals.
I think the spot is good for the Cardinals, but maybe not great. This is going to be a fast-paced game probably, so a lot of attempts. That puts Kyler Murray into the cash consideration for me. The running back situation is pretty murky with David Johnson and Kenyon Drake not really having a clearly defined role. And then as far as pass catching, it's tricky because Larry Fitzgerald and Kirk are really the only 2 guys who have gotten consistent playing time throughout the season. So I think that they both make good options, especially Kirk, who hasn't really had a high average yards per catch this year, only 9.6, but last year was much higher. So I think that might be bad luck. And I think Kirk would be my preferred option to do a game stack with.
Okay. I know you talked about not having a defined role here in terms of David Johnson being back, Kenyon Drake looking great in his first game. The big question here is, are you still justifying a $5,700 David Johnson? Because obviously the price point is appealing for a guy that has that type of upside, right? On FanDuel, you're getting David Johnson at what is he, 6,800? But $5,700 on DraftKings says quite a bit. And then over on our sponsor Fantasy Draft, you've got David Johnson coming in at 10.6, which is also very friendly. Is that enough for you?
I think they priced it really well to make it interesting because we know he's underpriced given his talent. But I think the most likely result is that they split it with Johnson maybe getting 60%, Drake 40%. But there's a lot of variance in this because there's a big question mark about David Johnson's health, and that kind of variance can help you win the GPP.
Yeah. Ben?
So it's interesting because like Derrick Henry played the Bucs pretty recently, similar price, and I had no interest just because that is the anti what you want to do.
Nut low matchup.
Yeah, nut low, exactly. But David Johnson, the way he plays, it kind of negates the Bucs, strength up front. He could get it done via catching 8-10 balls. So I think if the ownership is really dormant, I may stack him in really unique Cardinal stacks, but there's no doubt that it's a very risky proposition.
The price tag, though, as Alex mentioned it, is priced to a point where it makes you really have to think about it.
If he was $1,000 more on a site like DraftKings, this would just be a non-discussion for me.
I'd have nothing.
Yep.
But as of now, I'm actually getting a decent amount. So we'll see how that pans out. By the way, free content today at awesemo.com, the NFL lineup builder, the NHL player projections, and the NBA data central. All of that is free. So be sure to check that out. If you haven't done so yet. That's the NFL lineup builder, NHL player projections, and NBA data central. And if you haven't checked out awesemo.com yet, use the sign-up code Deeper Dive, all one word, when you sign up. It'll get you 50% off your first month of Awesemo Plus subscription. Go to awesemo.com/join. When you scroll to the bottom, you'll see tutorials, videos on all of our most popular tools, how to use them, what they do, our premium Slack chat. And of course, we want to cater the subscription to you. So depending on what type of player you are, we want to give you what isn't too much and isn't too little, everything you need to be a successful DFS player. Use the sign-up code Deeper Dive, all one word, get 50% off your first month Awesemo Plus membership. That's awesemo.com/join. All right. Tennessee and Kansas City. Alex, this game to me is one that's given me trouble because you've got, well, first let me read off what we've got working here. 49.5 point total, third highest on the slate. Chiefs 6-point road favorites with a 28 implied total, 21 or 22 total for the Titans. But like, you've got a guy in Damian Williams who broke off that 91 yarder last week, which was great. He had more looks and 14-4 in terms of looks compared to LeSean McCoy. He definitely seems to be securing the top spot in this backfield. But it's a good Tennessee defense. And I don't really know if Damian Williams will continue to play that way, given that outside of that one run, he's been terrible this season. He is, however, right now projected for, last I looked, significantly less ownership than Ronald Jones, although it's getting closer, still 20 to 10%. And then on the other side, no Corey Davis. So, is A.J. Brown or Adam Humphries a low upside player? Are these guys going to be in play? What about Derrick Henry? There's a lot to talk about in this game. Feel free to start wherever you want.
I think Damian Williams is kind of interesting because if you just go off last week's number and the workload he got last week where McCoy didn't play very much, he looks like a really nice play. But if you go back 2 weeks, they had like an even or like more even split, and then neither of them really looked that good. So that's an interesting spot. And then, Mahomes coming back, he's probably not going to be running the ball that much given the knee dislocation. And I think that will hurt them throwing the ball too a little bit because they won't have to guard against the quarterback run. And that might hurt his effectiveness at throwing the ball. But, I mean, he's a tremendous player, so still a great spot for him.
Okay. Yeah, what about you, Ben? Damian Williams, we'll start with him.
Yeah, I mean, last week, of course, when you break off that kind of run, it's pretty easy to get there. But I think we've mentioned a good amount of middling priced backs, and he's behind most of them for me. I will say, just to open it up a little bit, I have interest in Kansas City. I think they're a little against the grain, which is something you rarely get to say with Patrick Mahomes and the gang, but I have no problem stacking him up with some of the big time pass catchers. I don't think the ownership is going to be there to the extent it should be, and that's easy leverage for me in a spot with the Titans that I don't really worry about the matchup too much. So I do have some interest on this Chiefs offense.
So do I. How would you rank them in terms of preference? Like, is it more so the passing game and much more the passing game than the run game for you?
It is, just because it's a more of a stacking situation for me, and I'm looking kind of, Mahomes, Kelsey, Tyreek, expensive stack, but again, one we know can get there. And then you have Derrick Henry as an easy run back on the other side. That's how the Titans, you assume, have to try to slow this game and lean on him. Just Tannehill and his mangled wide receiver core that may or may not include Marcus Mariota at some point in the future.
You saw that too. That was crazy.
Life comes at you fast, but I think the Chiefs are an interesting. It allocates a ton of salary, but it's still worth it in my opinion.
Ben, what about AJ Brown and Adam? For me, AJ Brown, I just would much. I know that Adam Humphries is very cheap, so we can get to him. We will talk about him, but with AJ Brown, it just feels like there's actually a ceiling here. Where with Humphries, if you get 12 fantasy points, you're stoked. Brown's priced affordably. You're going to see ample opportunity here, you would think, whether they're playing from behind or not. And then there's Humphries, who they'll probably play the same amount of snaps. It's just one of them has, much more higher value targets every time.
Yeah, I mean, Brown is going to carry, in my opinion, kind of more ownership than he should, but it doesn't mean I'm just going to omit him from my lineups. He's someone that should have plenty of targets. He's a big, talented guy at home in a game where they possibly are trailing. It's a good spot. It's just we've seen these Titans wide receivers. It's not exactly a super solid situation week in and week out. There is more risk than I think a lot of people are realizing.
Okay. What about the passing game for you, Alex?
I think Corey Davis being out is pretty significant because AJ Brown has been really productive when he's been on the field. He just hasn't been playing as many snaps as you would think given the amount he's produced. So at a really cheap price tag across the industry, he makes a really nice play in both cash and GPP. Humphries a little bit cheaper, so he's also in play. Should get a nice boost. So I think those guys are pretty interesting.
Okay. Yeah, and especially given that, when you look at targets this season, 41 or 45 for Davis, 41 for Humphries, 41 for Brown. Across the board, they're almost identical here. So having Corey Davis out, you're likely going to see those voided targets go up. I would say, even though he hasn't been targeted a ton, an extra 2 or 3 for Brown and Humphries is still significant. What about Derrick Henry, Alex? You would think if this game stays competitive, Henry's got one of the best matchups in terms of the run game in the league this week, but there's also the concern that if they get away from the run, Derrick Henry probably doesn't score a 23-yard receiving touchdown like he did last week.
Yeah, it's a spot where I think that the team versus Kansas City is they've been pretty good on defense this year, to be honest. A little bit better than average versus the pass, a little bit worse versus the run, as far as yards per play. And I think that Derrick Henry is in maybe a tough game script spot where if they get up, I'm sure he'll put up a pretty good game. But if they're down, probably not very good prospects. But I think his price on FanDuel at $7K is really nice. The other spots I'll probably pass up on.
Okay, Ben.
Yeah, I'm pretty similar. I mean, I do think there is some merit to linking up the reverse game script here, because if you get it, I think the reward is massive. But more than likely, Henry is not in the right game script here. So it's just a matter of balancing that against the grain. And that is why this is one of the games for me. I have much more interest in stacking this game than trying to identify an individual play.
Okay. I have a little bit of Derrick Henry, but not nearly as much as I did last week. The game script here seems a little bit concerning to me. I just, don't know if I believe in Tannehill, but yeah, AJ Brown is definitely in a spot where, like you said, Ben, maybe getting a little too much ownership, but getting away from him entirely at that price point doesn't seem wise either. Ben, Indianapolis and Miami. Let's go here. We've got 3 games to go, and this one is, well, it's going to be an ugly one. Jacoby Brissett out. You got Brian Hoyer at the helm for Indianapolis. And then, of course, Ryan Fitzpatrick for the Dolphins, coming off their first win of the season. 44-point over-under, 27.3 total for the Colts, 16.8 for the Dolphins. Colts are 10.5-point favorites at home. Let's start with Marlin Mac in a game where if he disappoints, I'll be very disappointed, because it'd be tough to disappoint against the disappointing Miami Dolphins defense.
It really would. One of the, I don't say the easiest spots. It's never easy, but he has everything that you could want in terms of being at home against an awful defense. They should lean on him heavily. They are decimated, not just at quarterback, but their wide receivers are a mess. So 20-plus carries seems more than reasonable for this spot, and he should return really solid value. I think he holds some cash viability as well. Only other guy, and then I'll pass it back. I think with the murkiness of the wide receivers, a lot of people are going to, and I don't think this is misguided, you're going to look to Pascal, maybe Chester Rogers. I actually like Jack Doyle quite a bit at the tight end, very reasonable price tag. We know Indy likes to utilize them, and this is a guy that is certainly live to find the end zone. So a little Doyle and certainly a lot of Marlon Mack for me.
Okay. How about the Colts offense for you, Alex?
Yeah, I have to agree with Ben there. I think Doyle is a really interesting play because so Deion Kane was waived and Paris Campbell is out. T.Y. Hilton, of course, is out. So that really leaves Chester Rogers and Zach Pascal as the only 2 wide receivers that have played this year. Marcus Johnson coming in as the wide receiver 3, hasn't played yet. But I was looking at the game logs from last year, and to start the season off when everyone was healthy, they ran a lot of Doyle and Ebron together. Like Doyle ran routes on almost every play, and Ebron ran routes on more than half the plays. So they have it in their playbook to really go with this 2 tight end set with 2 wide receivers. And they did it more last week than they had been previously as well. So I think Doyle is maybe one of the sneakiest plays of the week.
Okay, fair enough. Early in the week, his ownership was like way up there, and we've certainly seen that come down a bit, down below 8% on DraftKings, which is pretty appealing. On Fantasy Draft, you've got him coming in at 7% as well, and then on FanDuel, Jack Doyle weighing in at, where is this guy? 6.9. So yeah, I mean, you're not going to be you're not going to be getting him at high ownership whatsoever. Earlier in the week, we had him projected as the highest owned tight end. That's come down a lot. The Miami side, Alex, Preston Williams, had looked awesome. And last week, it really looked like that was the game where this guy rises to become the top wide receiver on this team, at least for 2019. Had been looking really impressive, had been targeted quite a bit. Was making big plays and coming in with 2 touchdowns last week. And then he tears his ACL, which is brutal. So that leaves us now with Devontae Parker. It leaves us with Micah Sickie, who I actually have some interest in. I wish he wasn't as popular as he was hoping he'd go overlooked. But he appears to really be getting involved lately. When you take a look at how they've used him in the offense, he's seen 7, 4, 3, and then 6 targets last week. So it's kind of all over the map, but there's opportunities to be had there on a team that just lost their top target. And then he's played 60+% of snaps in back-to-back weeks. I think it's a fascinating spot for him. Will he produce? I don't know, but it does seem like he's starting to come into his own. What are your thoughts on the Miami Dolphins offense here in a game where they're pretty big dogs on the road?
I think there are a lot of DFS plays here, and they're not going to be ones that you feel comfortable with because none of these guys have really produced to this point in the season other than Sickie. And actually, Sickie is probably the one I'm least interested in, to be honest, because his ownership is really, really high, like compared to his talent level. So I'm not feeling him that much this week, but Devontae Parker should get a nice boost with Preston Williams out. Albert Wilson, someone when he gets on the field, he gets targeted at a high rate, but he just hasn't been on the field this year. Maybe Preston Williams being out will change that. And then Kalen Ballage is probably one of my favorite value options of the week because everyone's out for Miami. You got Patrick Laird and Myles Gaskin backing him up, who haven't played in the NFL a single snap on offense this year. So I think that finally these best ball shares I have of Ballage, I'm hoping this is the week they pay off.
Let's hope so. Ben, Kalen Ballage, Micah Sickie, Devontae Parker. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, they're going to – I mean, there's nobody else in Miami. As bad as they are, I don't expect them to get shut out. Someone's going to have to do something. I know Gesicki has some ownership, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't like the matchup against, the way Indy plays defense with the cover 2, working underneath. He really should rack up catches on targets. I don't see why he wouldn't. Alex mentioned guys like Albert Wilson, certainly Parker. Those guys more boom bust, I think, for large field tournaments. I get the merit there. And then Ballage, very cheap. There's nobody back there to really compete with him workload wise. It's just a matter of how do you want to prioritize the number of cheap backs that we have on this slate.
So would you say Gesicki is your top play from Miami? And I know it's not saying much, but is he the guy you like most right now?
He is. Okay. I feel pretty comfortable that he returns a solid value on a tight end slate that, we don't have Kittle. We don't have some of the other guys. I don't really love a ton at tight end, so it's nice to fill that position.
For sure. I like him too. Probably won't end well, but you know what? No. When you're getting a discount at an already weak position, you mentioned there's no Kittle, there's no Ertz, now there's no Evan Ingram. There aren't a ton of options. And I don't think he's really that much more volatile than someone like Jack Doyle. So, okay. And there's also not an Eric Ebron on that team to take away red zone opportunities at the position. 2 to go here. Let's talk about Carolina and Green Bay. Alex, Aaron Rodgers has Davante Adams back for the second straight week. And I was trying to pull up some injury news here, because there's a couple important ones. The biggest one is James Bradbury. They have 2 corners that are questionable for this game, I thought. But the fact that Bradbury could be out, and I'm trying to see, I don't think we have any news on it yet. If we do, please interrupt. But if that's the case, I mean, that just makes this an even more appealing matchup for a guy in Davante Adams, who I already have a good amount of Adams. They're coming off a terrible game. And, you talk about the opportunities here. He hasn't scored yet. There's no way that continues. If Bradbury's also out, it just makes it – he could be my top play on the slate if that's the case. I might even put him above – it sounds crazy. Bradbury's out. I might even put him above Michael Thomas. But go ahead and talk to me about the Packers, Alex.
Yeah, I think that Davante Adams is probably the guy I'm interested in as well because as far as other wide receivers, there is no clear established wide receiver 2. They kind of rotate through their core aside from Adams. And, Aaron Jones is he has a nice price on FanDuel in particular, but pretty expensive across the other sites for someone who only gets 2/3 of the work. But Adams, I think, in a price range that has some good players like Mike Evans, Godwin, Thomas that are siphoning ownership, maybe he'll go overlooked, especially because he hasn't been healthy.
Yeah. Ben, I like Adams here. I believe that the connection between Aaron Rodgers and Adams, it's not I believe, I know. I mean, it's one of the best in the entire league. And if I'm getting him the biggest thing for me is a sub 7K Davante Adams for me. I don't care what the matchup is. I'm always going to have interest. It's that simple.
Yep. I think that really sums it up. Honestly, this is a guy that we know Rodgers in tough matchups, he's one of the few guys I feel like across the league, it doesn't really matter. He says, I'm going to my guy.
Yeah.
I think he can win. It doesn't matter. Other quarterbacks say, you know what? We'll cancel and I'll work with my other weapons. But that is not what the Packers do. So he should be busy. He should dominate this matchup. The prices, it just doesn't reflect who he is and the target volume he could easily see in this game. Premier play on the slate. I'm in total agreement.
Okay. What about the rest of the Packers?
There it gets a little tougher. I mean, Aaron Jones is someone that he's seeing about 2/3 of the work against Jamal Williams, and he's shown clearly that he can still get it done with that type of volume. It's not as secure as someone like Marlin Mac or those other guys, but I think if you're looking to load up on the game, you can do that. I don't have anything else really for the secondary pass catchers on Green Bay, and then we have the looming how much is too much of CMC? Is this price too lofty, or what do we do there?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I really like right now. I honestly don't have that much of him. And of course it's always really scary. Why don't you go ahead and answer your own question?
So yeah, I was hoping that you would have a super
no. I'm putting that right back off on you.
Yeah. And I'd say, yeah, that's where I am too. So, I write a premium article, which is behind the paywall each and every week, early in the week, giving my thoughts. And in that article, I discussed this, and I thought, it's still a definite buy for me. And I think in a lot of spots it still can be. But I'll tell you, having built this morning some of my lineups, the opportunity cost was more than I thought it was. And I actually find myself coming up with less McCaffrey than I thought I would. And it's just an opportunity of how this slate fell and all the opportunity cost at running back. There's a lot of pay down options, and it kind of prevented me from getting a lot of McCaffrey.
Right. It's scary. No question.
Yeah,
right now I
had
like 11%, and I don't know. It feels like 91% not enough, but 89% too little. What about you, Alex?
We're talking about McCaffrey.
Yeah.
I think that, he's probably the top play on the slate, like as far as points, but to me, he's pretty easy to leave out of my lineups too, because, there isn't any like tremendous value on this slate. Carolina is only projected to score about 2 touchdowns. If they go under that, it's hard to imagine McCaffrey getting there. And although he's been exceptional, like I think it's just the price tag is the highest it has been all season, and that has a big opportunity cost.
Just real quickly, the problem I have, by the way, and Alex, maybe you can answer this with like stacking up Green Bay is I really like Adams, but who else am I pairing Rodgers with? Like Allen Lazard? Do I want to pair him with a $7,400 Aaron Jones, or a $5,200 Williams, which, would be fine, but they're still running backs, and I don't know their involvement here in the passing game going forward. Like, do you see yourself having a lot of Rodgers? And if so, is that going to kind of curtail your ability to get a lot of him in there?
Yeah, I agree with you. He's hard to stack up as a 3-man stack. So a 2-man with Adams and Rodgers is probably how I'd go. That'd be my preference. I think that it's a little bit of a disadvantage to some other teams where you can stack up multiple guys because, of course, the quarterback production is the sum of the receivers. So if you get 2 receivers that go off on the same team, that's a huge quarterback performance. Not going to be able to get that in Green Bay, but I'm happy enough with Adams because he's a productive player.
Okay. Ben, same question. I think it's an important one.
There are just certain teams and certain games where I think stacking can just be misguided, even if you like it on the surface. And this to me is one of them. It's just the pieces don't fit for what I'm trying to do. Even when you look at trying to run it back with McCaffrey, and that seems pretty obvious, that the salary allocation isn't great. And as you guys mentioned, Green Bay is someone, there's a very real chance in my mind that Davante Adams could have a slate-breaking performance and Rodgers doesn't turn out to be the clear optimal QB.
Right.
Most other spots around the league, if you see that, it doesn't work like that. It's just because he's so polarizing. And you could have a situation where you pick wrong between MVS, Lazard, Allison type guys, and it actually is a detriment to what could be a really good lineup. So I'm not overthinking it. I have Adams mostly as a standalone, and then I work down from there.
Okay. Makes sense to me. And if and by the way, I shouldn't need to tell anybody this, but if you are playing if you are playing Rodgers, you are playing Davante Adams. Like,
can confirm.
There's no way you're not. So just get that out there. Anything else for Carolina? DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, Ben, quick, and then Alex.
I don't have a ton to say. I mean, I think if you want to get away from McCaffrey and you want exposure to this game, that can be a way to do it. But even with 10 games, I found myself prioritizing other fringe stacks ahead of Carolina.
Okay. What about you, Alex?
I think the DJ Moore is probably a good cash play across the industry because he's just kind of cheap for being a wide receiver one. It's a good matchup because Green Bay gives up more yards than average per passing play. And I think the big knock against DJ Moore is he hasn't gotten the end zone this year so far. But going through NFL research, it's most teams reach the end zone at about an even rate per yard passing and throwing and running. So we've seen McCaffrey get all the touchdowns this year, but DJ Moore is averaging 12 yards per catch. Curtis Samuel is averaging 13. So if they go over that, there's a good chance they'll reach the end zone. And I kind of like the Kyle Allen stack with these two guys.
Okay. Anything you want to add, Ben?
No, like I said, I think that's a way to get exposure if you really want to hone in on this game. But for me, I ultimately didn't get there too much, and I hope I can get away with it.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Let's hit on the last game here. Pittsburgh, LA Rams. Ben, talk to me about this one, a game that I am not particularly interested in. Jaylen Samuels could make a pretty good argument for. Cooper Kupp, I'm always going to have a decent amount of him, but just a ton of respect for this Pittsburgh secondary. They've been fantastic. Ever since Minkah Fitzpatrick came over in that trade, they have just locked shit down. And you've seen that from week to week. I don't know how much I trust Jared Goff here, and I don't know how much I like this game, knowing that, even if Juju plays, he's going to have a brutal matchup with Ramsey. He's probably still hobbled. Mason Rudolph doesn't throw more than 3 yards downfield. The whole game is an odd one to me. And while you definitely have pass catching options for the Rams, especially with Brandon Cooks out, we'll see volume more heavily concentrated. How much do you trust Goff in this passing game or Gurley against this Pittsburgh defense? Start where you'd like, sir.
I think you kind of summed it up. It's not a good spot for the Rams. The Steelers secondary has been very impressive. Minkah Fitzpatrick has been very impressive, but I think there's a chance that Goff is like 1% owned. And as a stack, the Rams are always a team that I do like to stack up, just the way they kind of structure their offense. It's easy to stack them, especially with Cooks out of the picture. So rolling a Goff, Kupp, Woods type thing, it does make sense. You want to roll it back with someone like Jaylen Samuels, who we know he's not going to give you much on the rushing side, but he's certainly live for 10 more catches this week. That's how I plan to attack the game. But you're right. There are more red flags than not when you look at the individual matchups against what are two very impressive secondaries.
For sure. Your thoughts, Alex?
I think the Rams are pretty interesting. Cooks being out is pretty significant for Woods and Kupp. And it looks like Gerald Everett is pretty expensive actually compared to how good he is. So I'd probably be off him. But Kupp, I think, is a good cash play. Not as good as Michael Thomas. So if you can find some good value, I'd throw them both in probably. And I kind of like the Goff call too, because it seems like Kansas City, Tampa, Arizona, New Orleans, these teams are going to get all the ownership, and some of these other offenses are pretty good too.
All right. So we've reached the end of the road. Ben, final thoughts from this slate. Of course, any hot takes, I'm always happy to hear them. 10 games, of course. You said it is in your wheelhouse. Anybody that you think you need to take a stand on, whether that be targeting them heavily or staying away from them, Ben, and then the same question for you, Alex.
I think on a slate like this, it's really just trying to prioritize the game, as it always is. Prioritize the games. I have a handful where guys like Davante Adams are standalone plays that they're going to be an integral part centered around my stack games. and then you just hope you get the right stack with the right one-offs. That's really my plan in this. And then the most polarizing thing to me is getting Kamara right, whichever way that is. I hope I get away with it not really burning me that I don't have a ton of him outside of the stacks, and that will probably define my week.
Okay. And you, Alex?
I think there's a lot of guys on the slate that can kind of break the game by putting up maybe 40 plus. So I think just sprinkling those guys in, like McCaffrey, Julio, and everyone else. I think I'm not going to take too many stands on those guys because you never know any week who it's going to be. We didn't get to this final game, but Jaylen Samuels, man, that's a guy that I'm totally off of this week. And it seems like he might be kind of popular, like because people are just looking at this box score or his game log, and he got 20 fantasy points, but he lost. He didn't even rush the ball a majority of the times. Trey Edmonds really came in and did that, so that's one fade of the week for me.
Okay, yeah, I'll throw a couple out there. I don't know how much Ronald Jones I want, but at the same time, one like semi-natural pivot would be Damian Williams. And I don't know how much Damian Williams I want because I think they're both super volatile. And earlier, like I wrote the article, the pivot for DraftKings yesterday on the site. And at the time, Williams was a fraction of the ownership. And then you start to see it change a little bit and feel a little bit more uncomfortable. I'll say again, too, that 6,900 Davante Adams just feels insanely low. I know he hasn't been great, but he had another week to get fully healthy. I just think that's too cheap, along with a 13-8 on fantasy draft. That'll do it for us. Stick around. Nolan, Kelly, and Eric Voivodich. I'm going to have to ask him how do I pronounce that, Alex?
I just pronounce it V.
Okay. And EV. You got your inactives, breaking news and injuries, pretty important stuff. They're going to lead you into live before a lock with your boys, Josh Engelman, Chris Spags. They'll take you up to 1 p.m. Eastern time for that lock. Again, this has been the Deeper Dive presented by FantasyDraft.com. We'll catch you back here next Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern time. Good luck, everybody. And before you head out, if you enjoy the show, you want to help support us here, like the video, hit us with the thumbs up. It helps greatly. We appreciate you. It'll bring you good luck. Subscribe, hit that notification bell as well. We'll see you back here next Sunday.
Week 10. With me, myself, Eric Voivodich. Appreciate you, Dave. You think you got it pretty much right on the last show. Wrapping it up.
You watching Lofty? Come on.
Jay is the line. And with me, I got Nolan Kelly. Nolan, good morning. How you doing today?
What's going on? I'm filling in for Sam Smith, who is getting married this week. Very exciting for him. He is off for the week, so congrats, Sam. He will be back next week breaking down the slate with you, talking inactives. Obviously, this is a new show, so what we're going to be doing is stemming the tide between these two shows. We're going to be inactives should start dropping pretty quick here. And then as the inactives come out and we start knowing about them, we will air them live on this show. If we hear about them in real time, I've got Adam Schefter's Twitter account pulled up, and we will be ready to go. If we hear anything breaking or anything exciting, we will deliver that news to you as well. We're basically just going to go through all of these games, all 10 of these games on this main slate today, talk about what some of the injuries are, what some of the possible inactives are, some of the possible pivots that you can make in your lineup if certain players are in or out. And then we will hand things off to Josh and Spags at 9 o'clock Pacific, 12 o'clock Eastern time, and they will take you through all the way up until lock. We just got our first piece of breaking news here. Are you ready for this one? Lesean McCoy inactive today for the Chiefs. We're going to be bumping up Damian Williams. I'll tell you that much. He was in not a very good spot to start this. He wasn't getting a ton of the snap share. Damian Williams is approaching lock territory at that price point in this matchup with the Chiefs favored by 6 points. That's huge news.
That is huge news. Yeah, we busted a long run last week. So now him getting the lion's share of the carries, that is definitely something to factor in as you're building lineups this morning.
We got two Williams to choose from here, right? We got Darrell Williams and we got Damian Williams. Darrell Williams only had one rushing attempt last week in Week 9 versus Minnesota. Damian Williams, I believe, had 12. I think he is the de facto starter here. He is a very, very reasonable price point, and it was already looking like he was going to take over this lead role. So I am a huge fan of popping him into your lineups as much as possible. You said it first. He broke a 91-yard run off last week, 125 yards on 12 attempts. He looks like he may be the lead back down the stretch here as Andy Reid starts to fade a little bit off the LeSean McCoy starter talk. So that's huge. I think you're going to get him at reduced ownership as well if people aren't building or if people don't know about that. Like if we had the entire week to build up on this news, we would be seeing him in the 50% range. As it stands now, his price point on DraftKings is $4,900, and he will probably get up to that 20-25% range. But that's another one of these backs that's just priced in a great spot, and I think this is a week to pay down at running back, and we just got this news makes it even more so.
Yeah, good point. I think some people that maybe built their lineup, sometimes people building their lineups during the week, spending a lot of the time early in the week. Come Sunday, they maybe have other things going on, whatever, too many things to look at. I can see that being missed, and I can see, yes, his percentages being a little bit low. So that's the purpose of our show here today is to bring you kind of that late-breaking news, not just the report, but then how does that impact the team around it, your lineups, et cetera.
Exactly. One more quick piece of breaking news before I'll just interrupt you there. Juju Smith-Schuster, who was questionable with the toe injury, is expected to play according to ESPN's Diana. I don't know what her last name is. She's just called Diana ESPN. So there you go. Another little bit there that's coming out. So, why don't we go through this game by game, and we'll just kind of interrupt things as we go if anything happens that's breaking news. And we'll just stop and make sure to update you so you can adjust your lineups as quickly as possible. Break it down. Kansas City at Tennessee to start.
Yeah, I think there's one notable one. Well, we already touched on one, but the most notable is who is playing today. Nolan, it's Pat Mahomes.
Yeah.
I think that news has probably been out for most of the week, so folks shouldn't be too surprised by that. A couple other injuries to note. Looks like Eric Fisher is out. Corey Davis, doubtful. So potentially more work for someone like a Tajay Sharp. And Delaney Walker is also out.
Yeah, it looks like just
Smith? Yeah.
These inactives just dropped according to James Palmer here. So we have Corey Davis is inactive. That is confirmed, as well as Delaney Walker. So you're going to probably want to bump up A.J. Brown there. You're probably going to want to bump up Tajay Sharp. I think that basically you're going to see more targets for each, more routes run for Sharp. But definitely Brown becomes a workhorse, I think, in this offense, and in a pretty good spot against an improving but still weak secondary here. Kendall Fuller as well out for the Chiefs. Chad Henne out. So the only real surprise here is the Lesean McCoy news. Got some Falcons inactives right now. Desmond Trufant is out, it looks like, so a little bit weakened. Little bit weakened in the secondary there for the Falcons as well. Getting back to this game, Jonah Smith is a great play, I think, at his price point. 73% snap count last week. He's a great punt. You can even double tight end stack if you want to get a little bit creative in your large GPPs and game stack with this, with Mahomes, Kelsey, and then bring it back with Jonah Smith, who is in a pretty good spot this week. He's an athletic freak. He just really hasn't delivered the production that he oozes in talent. So I think we're starting to see that, though, and this could be a really good spot for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tennessee's been good. Ryan Tannehill, since he stepped into that position as the lead dog, taking over from Marcus Mariota, he's been solid. Tennessee's moved the ball, and Kansas City isn't exactly the 85 Bears. So, I do like those plays, and a lot of good options there. I mentioned Jonnu Smith, definitely someone that I think people should keep their eye on.
Right. We got more breaking news here. It looks like Lamar Jackson is in tonight. He was questionable with an illness. He will play, or today, I should say. So he was expected to play anyways, but it's nice to know that we have that confirmed. And of course, if you missed late night with Adam Schefter, I don't know what's going on, but Adam Schefter just loves to stay up till 3 a.m. and drop watch bombs on us all. It's really strange. This is like a new development where he's staying up at super late and giving us all the news. So if you missed it last night, Matt Stafford is also out. We will get to that game in a little bit later, but I think that has some huge implications for the entire game. It's great for the Chicago Bears defense. It's great for David Montgomery. They also are missing possibly some of their defensive line, or they're certainly banged up. Romeo Okwara is out for them. So it looks like Snacks Harrison is going to play, though. He is not listed on the inactives report, which means you can, I was really looking forward to possibly playing Montgomery in a situation where 3/4 of the Lions defensive line is out. That situation will not materialize right now, but it does still look like a great spot for them. And of course, if you have Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones, you have to be a little bit worried about I totally forgot even who's starting for them. Is it Jeff Driscoll? No, I'm getting all these horrible backup quarterbacks mixed up here. It is, yes, Jeff Driscoll, 6th round pick from the 49ers, transferred over to Louisiana Tech. Very raw, and I don't think is going to tip the needle anyway. So you never know with these backups, unproven backups that we've never seen before. But I'm not super sold on Driscoll. But anyways, I keep getting carried away with this breaking news here. Should we move it on to the next game here? Cleveland Buffalo.
Yeah, I think the one thing to note, because we already kind of you're talking about the Detroit Chicago game. Bears defense is something I think maybe to keep an eye on for today. One thing that might be underrated, and probably I don't know if price has changed with the change in QB.
I love that call. Yeah, I think, and it's going to it's the same kind of principle as the LeSean McCoy news, where we haven't had all week to kind of sit there and go hey, what about the Bears D? Maybe I'm going to plug in that Bears D on Wednesday in my random lineups. Now all of a sudden you've got the Bears D in a great spot, and probably at reduced ownership because of this late breaking news. We also have some more inactive news. Taywan Taylor is out. Antonio Callaway is out for the Browns. Olivier Vernon is inactive today as well. Ricky Seals-Jones inactive today. Lots of inactives for the Browns right now. So I don't know how that really shakes down. I'm not super excited about this Browns passing attack against the Bills anyways. So there's probably much ado about nothing here. But I think if you're maybe sprinkling a little cheddar on this game, that is those are a lot of injuries to deal with there, and maybe you might want to lean towards the Buffalo Bills side as well. We also have Bills inactives out. TJ Yeldon is out. That's about it. In terms of major inactives for the Bills. Giants inactives just came out. Their starting center, John Halapio, has a hamstring injury. He is out. That's pretty big news. Both starting centers are going to probably miss this game. Evan Ingram, of course, out. Sterling Shepard out. So it's the Golden Tate and Darius Slayton show pretty much from this one.
Yeah, Tate's been good. He stepped in and did a great job. Sterling Shepard, tough to see someone with a concussion just not be able to bounce back. So hopefully, he can see the field back here in the next few weeks. But Yeah, a lot of inactives flying in. I think the one thing that, again, we want to make sure we point out, and things that we always call out on this show here, is starting centers. Like, so easy to overlook that when you're building a lineup. There's a lot of different impacts. But neither QB has necessarily excelled. This season, Sam Darnold's had his fair share of Mark Sanchez-esque moments, and with his starting center out, how's that gonna impact him? So.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of those things where, like, when you're thinking about from a fantasy perspective, you don't really factor that in sometimes, right? We're very guilty of just talking about skill positions and about allowing skill positions to affect our perception of these games. And we forget about, a lot of the time these games are won and lost in the trenches, and not having those two key pieces. And then also Daniel Jones, who's fumble prone. He has 8 fumbles this season and 16 turnovers, I think.
Crazy.
That's probably going to lead to some fumbles. So you're probably going to want to upgrade the Jets defense there. They're one of my favorite sneaky spots this week. I also really like the Jets just from a betting perspective as well. I'm not sure why anyone should be favored. I'm not sure why the Giants should be favored over anyone. So it's a little bit crazy to me. Let's move it on here. At Tampa, Arizona, Tampa minus 4.5, 52-point line. This is going to be a very popular DFS game. David Johnson back, Chase Edmonds out. Looks like safety Deontay Thompson is also out for the Arizona Cardinals. O.J. Howard is back. What are your general thoughts on this one?
Well, I think to your point, a lot of people are probably going to be looking at this game in particular. No major injuries to report as far as who's out. A couple of people back that you mentioned, David Johnson being back. Certainly worth noting. But Tampa Bay's been pretty stout against the run. They've been giving it up against the pass. So O.J. Howard, someone for Tampa Bay, he's back. I think folks were trying to get on the Cameron Brate choo-choo train the last few weeks, but never quite left the station.
You're preaching the choir, man. I lost a lot of money on Cameron Brate these past couple of weeks. A lot of football.
You're not alone there, Nolan. O.J. Howard's back. That said, he hasn't necessarily torn it up this year. And while Arizona has been susceptible passing, especially against the tight ends, Winston's got two stallions on the outside in Godwin and Evans. So expect them to continue to light it up. Again, the injuries not playing a huge part other than the David Johnson return.
Yeah, so the inactives for this game just came out as well. Nothing really surprising. Tremaine Brock, inactive. Demir Bird, also inactive. They're not really a factor anymore because Arizona's gotten away from the 4 wide receiver sets that they were running like 95% of all plays early on in the season. So nothing really crazy there. On the Tampa Bay side as well, I'm not seeing anything here that's noteworthy. We knew about this Chase Edmonds information earlier on in the week. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out because essentially you have Kenyon Drake now and David Johnson, who are very complementary not complementary backs. They're very similar backs. They're known for their pass catching skills. So I don't really know how these two are going to be used. The price point on David Johnson is decent, but it's not like we are guaranteed 100% snap count or something like that, or even like 80%. So I don't really know what to do. And then you factor in the Tampa Bay run defense, which is the number 2 run defense in DVOA according to Football Outsiders. So that means for me, this game is going to be a fade. Field Gates just had a tweet here. I'm going to read it out for you. Le'Veon Bell, active. LaShawn McCoy, inactive. We already got that one. Hollywood Brown, active. He was questionable. Chris Herndon, active for the Jets. Corey Davis, inactive. Demaryius Thomas was questionable. He is active as well. So most of the questionables that we thought were going to be active are active anyways. The only real surprise thus far is LaShawn McCoy and Corey Davis we kind of knew would be inactive as well. So there you go. Nothing super crazy so far in terms of the skill positions for your fantasy, except for that LaShawn McCoy news.
There you go. You heard it here first.
Moving right along. We got to give a little credit to the Eastern guys.
I'm kidding. Yeah, I guess we do have to mention where we got that information. But hey, we're bringing it to you all together comprehensively. Moving on, and you know what, gosh, some of these early games, I hate to say it, not the most exciting slate. You got Giants, Jets.
That's why they invented DFS, my man. It's for these
exactly right. That's why we're here. Otherwise, I don't think anybody would be tuning in, be checking off those honey to-do lists today. Otherwise,
that's right.
Moving right along to a game that maybe a little more exciting. Depends on which Atlanta Falcons team shows up, but New Orleans hosting the Falcons coming off the bye. New Orleans heavy favorites in this game. Some big returns on their side of the ball, and both sides of the ball, really. Kamara's back, Jared Cook back, Traquan Smith back, and on the Atlanta side, we know Matt Ryan's the big one, returning for the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, exactly. So Ito Smith out for the year. I'm sure that most of our viewers saw that news as well. Desmond Trufant inactive, as I said earlier. So that's probably going to be a bit of an upgrade for this Saints passing attack, though. It's not like you really need an inactive Desmond Trufant in order to upgrade against this Falcons defense, which has just been abysmal this year. Personally, from a DFS standpoint, I kind of like switching to the other side of this game and taking Matt Ryan and Julio Jones in some sort of stack. That's going to be a contrarian way to approach this high total game in the Coors Field of football. On the other side of things, Dan Arnold inactive, Austin Carr as well inactive. Tre'Quan Smith makes his return this week for the Saints. Jared Cook as well is back. My computer just did something super weird. Oh, I just opened Spotify. There we go. So it's not looking like anything crazy here. I'll put on some of that great Josh music that he had on the intro. I don't know what that was, but I never wanted to stop. So yeah, nothing super crazy here. I do think that you're going to probably want to upgrade Devonta Freeman on Yahoo as well. He's really cheap. So that's going to be a lock for me in a lot of lineups or close to it. I think he's like $13. DraftKings $51. Like that's a really good price. He had an 80% snap count with Ito Smith out last week. Brian Hill got about a 15% snap count. So
yeah, I was just saying. I think I was surprised as well at the low price for Devonta Freeman. But you know what? Hey, New Orleans is a very stout defense, and you can see him easily struggling. But just to your point, 80% plus snap count. That's just such a high rate. He's going to get the jump offs. So I do like Freeman as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just quickly touching on this Giants-Jets game, with the Ingram news out as well, Rhett Ellison, you probably heard him talked up a little bit about this week. In week 6 when Ingram was out, he was on the field for 100% of the snaps. So something to consider, as well as Tate and Slayton. He's another bargain tight end. I think he's probably like a safer play, whereas like someone like a Jonah Smith, who's also priced down, has much higher upside in a higher total game with shootout potential there. So.
Good to follow back on that. Never want to skip.
Baltimore Cincy, Baltimore -10. Cincy
Baltimore Cincy, yeah. AFC North. AJ Green's still out. Guys, I think a lot of people were hoping to see him back. So what does that mean for your Cincinnati lineups? Tyler Boyd's still up there. We mentioned Lamar Jackson. He is playing today. Nolan, you want to take us through the remainder of them?
Yeah, so it doesn't look like there's anything crazy. I think we talked a little bit about this game earlier. There was some talk of who was it? There was talk of Marshall Yanda possibly missing that. He was questionable. Ronnie Staley was questionable. Looks like both of those guys are in. They're also getting Jimmy Smith back in the Baltimore side of things to go along with Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters. Marcus Peters has actually been good according to PFF in his coverage grades. All of a sudden, this Baltimore defense is going to start, I think, getting a little bit better than it has been. This is a terrible, terrible spot for the Cincinnati Bengals. And then you said it on the wide receiver side of things. AJ Green out. Lots of 3 wide receiver sets in Cincinnati, kind of taking off of that LA Rams approach to offense. So Tate, Erickson, Boyd, all possible flyers, but just hate the matchup here. It's pretty gross.
It really is, yeah. Unless you're on the Baltimore side of it, I mean, Cincinnati, it's tough to get excited about really anybody on their side of the ball. Moving right along, I think that handles our 1:00 Eastern games to the afternoon slate. Leading off with Carolina heading out to Green Bay, and not too many notable new inactives. Davante Adams, we mentioned him. I know they were talking about him on the last show. Limited participant last week or throughout the week. He is expected to be a full go, and 80% last week. Led the team in routes ran. Another week of getting healthy, you'd assume, and his cost was pretty low this week.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a great spot. Lofty and Ben and Alex hit on that in the show before we got on here. I think that Davante Adams is probably flying a little bit under the radar. He's priced down a little bit. He's coming off leading the team in routes run last week. He had an 80% snap count. He's been a limited participant in practice thus far. Limited participant yesterday. That being said, it's probably a precautionary measure. And then, of course, you have the secondary storyline here with James Bradbury questionable, and that's a huge loss for this Carolina defense. he gets close to maybe not lock territory, but close to like being a really core play, especially if Bradbury can't go. It looks like Ross Cockrell would suit in, so you're losing about 25 pounds and 2 inches if he does come in for James Bradbury. Curtis Samuel not on the final injury report. Jimmy Graham was a limited participant on Friday. Robert Tonyan is out. Mercedes Lewis was questionable as well, but he is expected to play. But if it is the case that he doesn't go unexpectedly, Jimmy Graham could see a really huge workload in this one. And then some secondary questions for Green Bay. Jair Alexander, and Adrian Amos are questionable today. So lots of questions in this one. I think Davante Adams is a great play, though.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with you there. Carolina's been kind of giving it up, and especially with the cornerback issues, it seems like a dream matchup. So we'll see where that one goes. I mean, really, not to mention Aaron Rodgers has been kind of coming to his own. I mean, it seems like that offense is really starting to click. Been on fire the last few weeks. I mean, last week a little bit of a dip, but they punched it in on the ground. Moving on to the next game is the Chicago Bears. We talked on this one a little bit, hosting the Detroit Lions. Stafford. Again, if you did not hear, Stafford is out today. I happen to have him in a season long. I was even though I hate playing against the Bears, I was fingers crossed like he would. And so you got to make plans around that. A lot of other kind of question marks. But again, Stafford, the big one there. What else are you seeing in this one, Nolan?
Did I mistakenly label this as an afternoon game? Is this?
You did, yeah. It's a 1 o'clock. It's a 1 o'clock game. That's all right.
NFL line. Yeah, okay. So this is because the Inactives are already out for this one. So
yep.
This is my bad. This is an early game. We already have the Inactives here. So I do think that why is this not listed? Oh, you know what? It's the site I use. Terrible. Okay, so yeah, I do think that there's some ramifications. We touched on them a little bit earlier. I do think you need to upgrade the Bears defense here. I think you need to upgrade David Montgomery here, and I think you need to downgrade Golladay. None of this is and Marvin Jones. None of this is overly shocking. I think it's pretty obvious. And if you got some pools, or you maybe this betting line is going to move. It's probably already moved with the Stafford news, but I don't know what the line is at currently, but it's probably up to like 6 or 7 points. So I'm guessing this game script is going to be completely different, and I don't hate the Chicago Bears or defense or Montgomery stack as well.
Yeah, what is this? How do you feel about the Detroit running game now?
Zero interest.
Done that a little bit more heavily, but it's been hard to make of the Ty Lawson and situation back there. Anything in Detroit's backfield that maybe you're interested in?
No, I think the game script's terrible. I think you're looking at going up against a pretty stout run defense. There's absolutely nothing to like here. It's been a running back by committee. J.D. McKissick has been getting his shares. Ty Johnson hasn't really done much. So just a terrible spot. I will wait to get involved with this Lions team a little bit later. Before we go on, also, we should mention our sponsor, Fantasy Draft, the only rake-free daily fantasy site, brings the heat again with a $300,000 guaranteed rake-free contest. It is the Hooters main event. It's the largest and only rake-free contest of its kind you will find for Week 10. And remember, only on Fantasy Draft, 100% of fees are paid to contest winners. EMAC does a great read where he talks about 3%. Sign up at fantasydraft.com with the referral code AWESOME. You get a free 7-day trial as well. It's like $3.95 a month to play up to $1,000. It's a really good deal. So check out Fantasy Draft for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, who doesn't like a little bit, a little extra cash in their pocket, right?
Exactly, man. Why would you pay exorbitant rates when you don't have to?
Yeah, exactly. So let's keep it moving right along to.
We got 2 games. 2 games left.
2 more games. Yeah, 2 more games. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Stick around afterwards. Who we got afterwards, Nolan?
What's up?
Who's after us? We got Spags and
we got Spags and Josh Engelman coming up with Live Before Lock. So we'll take you through in the hour leading up to lock. They'll give you any breaking news, any just kind of talking over the slate. 2 entertaining guys. Good way to spend your morning.
Let's move it right along for the last few minutes here. We'll jump into another super exciting game that everyone is probably going to be tuning into. The Dolphins going to Indianapolis.
Doesn't get better.
Set out. So we got Brian Hoyer returning.
Yep. Yeah, so we got Brian Hoyer back, serviceable backup. I think it's not the worst spot. I don't hate it in GBPs really. If you want like a cheap stack to pair with some really expensive backs, it's going to be contrarian, especially with the Damian Williams news coming, or the LeSean McCoy, Damian Williams. There are so many backs to pay down for this week. We got Ronald Jones, we got Devin Singletary, we got David Montgomery. So the most likely build for a lot of people is going to be paying up for people like Michael Thomas, Travis Kelce, Cooper Kupp, all the wide receivers in great spots. So if you want to pay down at quarterback and pay up at running back and go for your Barkleys and your McCaffreys and try to gain some leverage on the field that way, I don't think that's a bad spot. And of course, this Miami defense is terrible. You have some really cheap price down receivers for the Colts. You have Zach Pascal, who had a 94% snap rate, led the team in routes run last week. Chester Rogers is in play. With T.Y. Hilton out and Paris Campbell out. Eric Ebron had a meeting with Frank Reich this week, not very happy about his role. He's like way down in the pecking order. Jack Doyle has taken over the starting tight end role in that offense right now. So I do kind of like this Indianapolis as a cheap contrarian stack. Pierre Desir, I believe, is doubtful. And then on the Dolphins side of things, Mark Walton suspended. Preston Williams on IR. That has two big effects here. One, of course, is that Kalen Ballage, a.k.a. the worst running back in all of football, gets the starting role. And my man, Albert Wilson, he's ready. He's ready for breakout. My best ball teams are going to come back from the dead. Albert Wilson's going to flash the skill that he showed last week. Last year, I actually like him as a sneaky GBP play as well, and near the bare minimum.
Yeah. If you didn't see Alex's tweet, I love that one. About Albert Wilson, and I couldn't help but take a look at a lineup and find where I can slot him in somewhere. But yeah, funny stuff from Mr. Osmo himself. Another thing to know, I think you pretty well covered everything on that game. We got a few minutes here, so let's get through it. The Rams back in action this week in LA, hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. Brandon Cook's out, so Josh Reynolds, we start stepping into that starting role. Reynolds is a cheap option there. We know they love the three wide receiver sets. Juju's questionable. We mentioned that it sounds like he is going to play. James Conner, Benny Snell out. So Jaylen Samuels, his price did go up a little bit this week. What else are you looking at for this one?
So for me, I'm right there with Alex on the Jaylen Samuels. I think he didn't actually run a lot of routes. I think people saw that pass catching, or sorry, he didn't get a lot of action in the backfield. Didn't get a lot of running attempts, and they were content to kind of split the duties between him and Trey Edmonds. James Conner and Benny Snell are officially out for this one. Juju was questionable, and he will play today. That's about it for news on this one. Josh Reynolds will probably step into the starting role here, though I'm not so sold about this. Like he almost would have been one of the best value plays on the slate last year, and he still is a great value. But there's just this offense is a little bit more diversified with Gerald Everett this year, and with Cooper Kupp just taking over that starting role, or we're taking over that as a wide receiver one. So rather than having three wide receivers that could go off every week, you're kind of in this situation where Cooper Kupp is just the guy now. So I was a little bit late to react to that, I think, but it's pretty clear that he is wide receiver one and in a great spot as well. Pittsburgh has not been great in DVOA at defending the middle of the field and the middle left of the field, and that's where Cooper Kupp runs about 60% of his routes. So pretty good matchup here for sure.
Indeed it is, yeah. And, LA Rams, hey, they're coming off a bye. A guy like Mccoy is working on putting together a great, game plan for today. They need to bounce back. Rams have been kind of struggling. They got too many weapons to not be playing as well as they are. So anything else? We got about a minute left. Nolan, any other last-minute injuries, reports coming in that we want to share with the viewers?
I think that's it, man. Let's pass it over to Josh and Chris Baggs. Feel free to like this video. We greatly appreciate it. It helps us keep these videos free. So if you could hit the like button as we transition over. You don't even have to leave the stream. It's just going to continue on. It's a new feature on the Awesemo YouTube channel. We have you covered for 3 straight hours of pregame NFL action every single week. So come on back next week as well. We will have the exact same format. Of course, Sam Smith will be back here, and he has some great analysis. He knows Pretty much every single player in the NFL and how good they are, and how the defensive matchups are. He's really brilliant, and he knows his stuff really well. So we'll be thankful to get him back next week.
Yeah, and he'll be married, so he'll want to spend more time on this stuff, right?
I like it.
All right, thanks everyone for tuning in. Stay on the site here for the next show, and we'll see you all next week. Good luck today.
All right, what's up, guys? We are starting up now. Welcome to the Awesemo.com Live Before Lock Show. We'll be taking you through Week 10 in the NFL and all the finer points, all the ownership, all the guys you should be rostering. I'm Chris Spags, joined as always by my Sunday buddy, our little church session here, the Chubster, Josh Engelman. How are you doing, Josh?
I'm pretty good. Liverpool's up 2-0, 30 minutes in. That's the best news that I can get on an NFL Sunday.
Yeah, different kind of football. We won't be talking much about Liverpool, but if you want to get that in real fast, like give your little do the Liverpool fight song or whatever, cheer, fun European.
You don't want me to be singing You'll Never Walk Alone on this show, both because I will be insufferable about it and because I can't sing worth a lick. But 2-0, scored immediately, hit him back again. It's great.
Good way to open up the show, I think, would be you singing. That's what the people want here. If we want to get those views up, you putting on a little show, putting on your best Annie voice would be what I would be looking for.
No one wants this.
Let's talk about the finer points of everything. But first, let's give a quick shout out to our sponsor of Live Before Lock and many of our great content here on the Awesemo YouTube streams. We have the sponsor over at fantasydraft.com, of course, the official home of rake-free DFS. So right now, go to fantasydraft.com and use the promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO, to get your free 7-day trial into the world of rake-free DFS. They have the Hooters main event popping off every week, so you can support both chicken wings and women, and also fantasy sports, as well as your own wallet. So go right now to fantasydraft.com and use that promo code AWESOMO for your free 7-day trial. And Josh, I know you do love fantasy draft. You're playing there all the time. And tell the people real fast why it's important for them to get a little bit less rake into their lives from their DFS sites.
Yeah, it's hard enough to beat the rake across the industry. So anything that you can do to lower the amount of money that you put out on a day-to-day basis is going to help you in the long term. It's just more money back in your pocket. It's the equivalent of not having to pay as much interest. And you should always be trying to limit that as well. Fantasy draft makes it really easy. A flat fee to start, and that is it. If you're playing enough volume, you are going to very, very greatly minimize your outlay back out to the other companies.
Yeah, all the contest entry fees go right to the winners on fantasydraft.com. So please go check them out right now and use that promo code AWESOMO. And real fast, we already got a super chat from Jannar Kaslingham. Oh boy, Jannar Kaslingham over on the YouTube chat. Thank you for the super chat. Asking Ronald Jones or Damian Williams for DK Cash. A very pertinent question to slate now that we know Sean McCoy inactive. Damian Williams should get a chance to follow up his big game last week. And Ronald Jones, one of the value plays du jour, one of the top owned plays. So where would you shake out with this one? Because I think I would favor Williams, but the ownership is going to Jones right now. So that's kind of a tough call.
I haven't looked at anything for DraftKings. That's not my site du jour for football, but let me pull it up and take a look so we can give an answer here. It was Williams and Jones, right?
Yep.
All right. Let's take a peek. Anything for our super chat friends?
Yeah. Look, we only like you if you super chat us. That's just, that's just no. I like each and every person out there because I'm very enthusiastic and very positive. That's what I'm known for.
So many Joneses. I would say it's Williams, probably.
Yeah. I think
given Alex's projections, at least.
I think there's too many ways that Ronald Jones can go south. The ownership, it looks like it should be there, but I just think there's a way where he fumbles. We kind of talked about it yesterday, and on the contrary, and Alex laid it out pretty well, where, what Ronald Jones fumbles, all of a sudden you have Peyton Barber again getting his 2 yards per carry, doing that usual thing, a safer back. There's enough ways where that can go south for him. The role certainly looked like it was there last week, but I'd be more inclined to go to Damian Williams, where we know now he's going to have at least a pretty good share of that workload alongside Darrell Williams.
For sure.
All right. Let's talk about some of the positions here. We'll go, as always, start off with some of the QBs, and that'll kind of inform the process as we go. But the ownership right now, let me just sort one more thing real fast. Where'd you go? Okay. We got a lot of ownership going to Jameis. We got a lot of ownership going to, of course, going to Lamar this week. It looks right now, though, like Drew Brees is currently the number 1 owned expected QB on DraftKings. And of course, if you want all the ownership projections and player projections right from Awesemo himself, go to awesemo.com/join and use that promo code LiveBeforeLock for half off your first month of Awesemo Plus. Drew Brees, got to be chalky. I did get him quite a bit using our projections at awesemo.com. So I'm with it. How are you feeling about Drew Brees this week in a spot where it does seem like they should be steamrolling Atlanta based upon the Vegas totals?
Drew Brees. Remember that commercial?
I don't.
Oh.
It's fantasy, which is funny because I usually remember things like that, but no, I don't even know I don't know what you just did.
A couple guys in a car. I don't remember the context, but at some point in time, the guy was just like, Drew Brees, really awkwardly. Anyway, hard not to like him. He's they're going a little over-owned as a stack on FanDuel as of right now. Jameis seems to be the guy with the highest top stack odds. If I take a look on the DraftKings side, similar story there. Big time love for the Tampa Bay side. Saints coming in second in terms of top stack probability. Little bit slightly higher ownership on Brees, but very clearly one of the better spots of the day.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a great spot. The very high team total. I think one of the highest single team totals we've had on the year. They are currently at 32.8 implied points from Vegas. So the spot here does seem like there should be some production. Going to put up a lot of interest for Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas going along with Brees in those stacks. I also wouldn't sleep on Ted Ginn. Atlanta does give up a lot of deep passes. Not so much, more of catch and run kind of long plays they've been giving up because he only give up 7.7 air yards per target, which I guess I won't be able to have that data updated anymore.
I know where air yards is now.
Add more funds. I'm not doing the Patreon. Did you read that email they sent? I'm sorry, but
of course I did. I've been a Patreon from the beginning.
So that email they sent yesterday had the most typos of an email that's ever existed in the history of emails.
They're my guys.
So much.
They're my guys.
I'm sure the site's great, but holy crap, guys, please double check your emails before you send them out. They had the email was like,
it's not important to everybody right now, man. We don't need to.
Oh, it was.
I'm
sorry, I have to get this out. They were like, we thought about doing this in the offseason. I was like, what? Why is this a marketing email? But they do have air yards. Some other stats are probably going to fill sites are going to fill the void. But rest in peace, airyards.com. I love you so much, and Josh Hermsmeyer. But yeah, not giving up a lot of air yards per target. So that is something where it could be more of a catch and run situation for Ted Ginn. But I think he's in a spot where I don't mind going to him as a double stack with Breeze instead of Kamara. I think he's a little bit lower owned, and I like Ted Ginn's big play upside, and people seem to be sleeping on him for the most part, ownership wise, as a value play.
I assume they're sleeping on him because he's Ted Ginn.
But he's in there. Like, he hasn't been great this year, but that's also been mostly with Bridgewater. Breeze at least does throw it deep a bit more, and that's going to play more into Ginn's hands. Like, I don't think you should have a ton of Ted Ginn because, again, he is Ted Ginn. But he's had monster days before, and he's had millionaire maker winning weeks. Like, I would have some Ted Ginn. Anyway, let's keep going here and talk about the next QB up based on the ownership that we have so far at Awesemo.com. Jameis Winston, another chalk Jameis Winston week. Always a blast to have a chalk Jameis Winston in our lives. Does seem like a spot, though, where even when he fails, he succeeds. And I don't mind going him today. Going against the pacey Arizona Cardinals, who are getting a little bit less pacey, but still playing pretty well, having some decent play volume going against them. Where are you shaking out with Jameis this week, given that Mike Evans and Godwin are going to be two of the higher owned plays along with him?
Number one dude, highest top stack odds. Ownership isn't even catching up to that. So I can't imagine not having a ton. They just throw so much, and the mistakes aren't really that harmful just because of the volume. It's really difficult on a week-to-week basis to get away from Winston plus Godwin plus Evans in some way.
Yeah, no, I agree. Godwin, so I think it was CJ, the Siege yesterday on the contrary mentioned that there has been some interesting little splits with the zone defenses and the man defenses. And I'm pretty sure that, Arizona plays a lot of zone, but I think they do mix it up a little bit. I didn't get as much as Godwin this week, and he's going to be higher owned than Evans. I do have a lot of Evans. Evans projects really well according to Awesemo. I did go with the bane of many people's existence, especially in season long this year, OJ Howard, along with my Jameis and Evans stacks. And would you have any Howard along with your Jameis today?
Yes, but like, he's not the priority. The most likely scenario is that he's a third guy as a part of that stack instead of just Jameis plus OJ Howard.
Okay. No, that's fair. I just know Godwin. I think he's a good player. I think there is a pretty appreciable difference between how they're used. I don't mind going to Godwin in lineups without Evans, but I just didn't get there as much as the both of them as well, especially given how much Michael Thomas I want to have, and I do have. It was a little bit hard to get to both those guys and Thomas, so I have less Godwin as a result. And if he goes off today, hopefully you pick him for your 100-yard guy, so we can ensure he doesn't go off.
It truly doesn't matter who I pick. I mean, it matters to me and to everybody watching because they're going to get jobbed out of anything good. So get excited, everybody. Get excited. We are 18 minutes away from me ruining some player on the slate. It's coming too. Like, it's real now.
It is real. It's very real. Hilariously real.
I don't know about hilarious.
Oh, I think it could
kind of super sad, depressing. There are other words that I could use that I won't use.
Do you think you'll get one before the year is over?
At this rate, no.
It's a small sample size.
I'm not confident that happens.
You know what? At least you're not EMAC, who actually had a really good game last week from Chris Carson. 105 yards on 18 attempts. 16 attempts. One of the better rushing games against Tampa Bay's defense this year. You know how many touchdowns he got, Josh? 0.
Oh, it's brutal. It's so brutal.
I'd rather have Robbie Anderson's performance where Sam Darnold missed them on so many plays and that line just gave up. Look, Anderson didn't get there, wasn't even close, but I'll take that stab rather than seeing Chris Carson get the first part of it and just not finish it off.
I'm so depressed right now.
That's what brings me joy, guys. And if you are getting joy from Josh's depression, please hit that like button real fast because that also helps us out quite a bit. Maybe that'll even cheer Josh up. So, but even if you don't want to see Josh cheered up, hit that like button anyway because that just will cheer me up even more. And you should want to see me happy, right?
I'm fairly certain that everybody is really happy that this is happening.
One of the funniest things we've ever had live before lock, to be honest. That and you eating the pizza rolls. I think those are the two things. Pizza bites, sorry.
I might have to eat those today if it happens again.
Next QB up on the list, Lamar Jackson, one of Osmo's best projected QBs on the week, has come down a little bit as a top overall value, but he was the top overall value for most of the week. We know what he did versus Cincinnati in week 6, went nuts, 150 rushing yards, 230 passing yards, could have even had more touchdown production in that game than he had. I don't have a ton of Lamar this week, which kind of scares me a little bit, knowing that we know his upside, knowing what we saw last week from Russell Wilson, where he was the high price guy. People probably didn't get there as much as they should, and he went nuts, and you had to have him to even come close to winning a tournament. So where are you shaking out with Lamar, given that he is a tough guy to stack and do the things that we know we're supposed to do with our DFS lineups?
Yeah, I think he's good. I think he's fine. As a stack, I think it's going a little overowned, but at the same time, that probably makes a lot of sense. He's the easiest guy to not stack. So I think that he's getting slightly underrepresented in the stack tool, just given his particular uniqueness. So I have no problem getting to him. He's probably like my 4th or 5th favorite QB of the day. I think that's a pretty reasonable spot for him. He's not an avoid or anything like that. I'll have him in, I'm guessing, probably like roughly 10% of my lineups.
Yeah, I have a little bit of him. I have a little bit of him naked. I have a little bit of him with Marquise Brown. I think Lamar, I get what you're saying with it. And he really doesn't come up. Like if you do the setting groups thing where you have 2 guys run back with him, like he simply doesn't occur in those spots. And that could be a bit of a blind spot, just knowing what we know of him. I think for a cash gameplay, especially, like I really would have no issue with Lamar. But I think, there's some risk for tournament that you're not going to be able to capture the full upside that he has. And, but I guess if you wanted to go to Lamar and then try to pay down at running back and get your Evans, get your Michael Thomas, get those guys in there, that's one approach where you wouldn't want the receivers anyway. With Lamar.
I think that could be reasonable.
Yeah, so it feels more cashy than tournament-y, but who knows, given the massive upside all those guys have. Keep going through the list here. Patrick Mahomes returning to some decent ownership, not crazy ownership, and I think to me that actually is one reason why I'm getting less Lamar, because Mahomes is a little bit cheaper on DK. And his upside, we know the situation. We don't know for sure the targets he's going to go to on a given week, but Travis Kelce really due for positive touchdown regression on a week with some crappy tight ends in the mix. I did get a good amount of Kelce. Tyreek Hill can beat any matchup. Obviously, another guy who can go nuts. And Damian Williams as well. Should be seeing more work with Lesean McCoy inactive today. Does get that pass game work. Did look really good last week. And we also just saw Christian McCaffrey have a good day against this Tennessee defense. I'd say they're not exactly one-to-one comparisons, but not dissimilar players. So how are you feeling about Mahomes here and a more easy to stack player than Lamar for sure?
I feel pretty good. He'd be my 3rd quarterback. I think he's getting owned about as much as he should be given our top stack odds. I have no real concern with his health. I can't imagine they would be bringing him back unless he was able to be like healthy and ready to go. I mean, I know that he's not like healthy, but I don't get the sense that they would be bringing him back if they were concerned. This is not I hope that this is not a Kevin Durant situation.
Yeah, no, I would think, given now Kansas City, I mean, football, obviously a very different sport than the NBA, and this is not the playoffs and it's not whatever. You would think they would hold him out a bit more if they needed to. Dislocated kneecap doesn't seem like a 2-week injury, but bless his heart, he's going after it. So I'll play him if he's out there. Like, I really don't have that issue at all.
If I get a paper cut, I might have to tell Tom that I'm not going to be back till January. So I'm not the right person to talk about people's injuries.
Yeah, no, I think that's tough but fair. I play through all sorts of pain every single day. Just the pain of being alive, frankly, would be enough to take out a bunch of weaker men. But no, I don't know. I think Patrick Mahomes is good to go. I think the spot's kind of interesting as well on the road, and maybe Tennessee can do enough to stay in that game and make Mahomes' value go up even more. Yeah,
I mean, every quarterback that we've hit on so far: Jameis, Breeze, Mahomes, and Lamar. They are 4 of my 5 favorite options for today. So
okay. So it's all right. So you're right with the ownership on the QBs then. Let's run through some of the other guys and we'll move on to the other positions. Ryan Tannehill getting some ownership. Kyler Murray getting some ownership. I would much prefer Kyler Murray out of that duo. We kind of saw last week, Tampa Bay's pass defense. They're a reverse. I mean, they're a run funnel going towards the pass game. So they are stopping the run really well. Even Chris Carson had that day, but really I don't see Arizona. I don't know. I guess I shouldn't say that because Arizona does sometimes really dedicate themselves to running the ball. But I do think Kyler has pretty good pass game upside here. That secondary for Tampa Bay is really bad. Christian Kirk being back in the mix looks good. Possibly more Andy Isabella, I think, will give them also more upside in the pass game. So I prefer Kyler to Tannehill, obviously different price points. But who do you have more of, Murray or Tannehill at kind of similar ownership?
Murray or Tannehill? Murray by quite a bit. And again, this is a FanDuel conversation. So for me, top stack odds 3 times is higher for Murray in Arizona compared to Tannehill in Tennessee. He's also getting, little over double the amount of ownership. So not necessarily like slightly bigger nod, but Tennessee's like the 10th or 11th ranked team. I'll have mild shares there, but I would rather go to Murray. A lot of that has to do with the fact that Christian Kirk is back. I think there are just more options for an Arizona stack that I like than for a Tennessee stack.
Yeah, that's where I shake out too. I don't have a ton of David Johnson. I do kind of worry about that workload for him, but I do like Kirk, Isabella, Fitzgerald. I think those guys. I even had a little bit of Max Williams, which not a play I liked, but that's where the projections took me. So I'll ride along with Max at 2X's, which means he's extra extreme.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about David Johnson.
Of course, another luminary in the Josh 100-yard picks, the most famous of them all, who played, I think, one play and then left the game.
I'm not over it, man. I'm still not over it.
Anybody else at QB you're getting? We got a question in premium Slack. Somebody, who is it? Where'd you go? Where'd you go, my friend? Freaks and Greeks, rather. Sorry. Asking, do you like Daniel Jones? No, I do not. No, I do not. Do you like Daniel Jones?
No, I don't like him at all. He would be I can't imagine prioritizing that on a short amount of lineups. If you're playing 150, you probably end up with, 5 or 6. But if I were playing one lineup, there's basically zero chance that I end up with Daniel Jones as the quarterback of that lineup.
Though too, for whatever it's worth, I did get some Red Ellison. Didn't love that, but I think he's cheap enough that he makes some things open up for you. And I also got not a good amount, but I got more Ellison, I think, than Golden Tate. But Golden Tate is a guy who jumped out to me at his price point of being worth some exposure. So maybe I should like Daniel Jones more than I do, but I just didn't get there in terms of his price point is not one I tried to hit. But look, if you want to go there in the Battle of New York, Freaks and Greeks, then go for it. But not a dude I got much of.
Speaking from a FanDuel perspective, I'd be very surprised if I were building one lineup. I would be very surprised if that quarterback wasn't Winston, Breeze, Mahomes, Ryan, or Jackson.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you. I mean, look, I have some weird lineups. We could run through the QBs that I still got some of. I got Kyle Allen, who actually Osmo was pretty big on yesterday.
I like
on the
that.
Contrary, and he projects well. He's pretty cheap on DK at 5,100, so I could see getting there. I did get a little bit of Mitch just because I think this is a spot where they could lay a beat down on Detroit, and maybe it's a Mitch get well spot because Allen Robinson should be able to beat him deep. I think that's an interesting play, and Montgomery still can have upside alongside Mitch. So I think Trubisky is worth a couple stabs, and he's burned me multiple times, but whatever. I also got a little bit of Darnold, and I got the faintest amount of Jeff Driscoll just because he's 4,100. And I thought he played with chutzpah last year for the Bengals. I thought he played well. He has some rushing upside. He does run the ball. Chicago's probably going to be a hall of horrors for him today. So I would not play much Driscoll, but at 4,100 on DK, I'll take a stab given that he has real talent around him at least.
I'll pass.
Anybody else you're getting cheap? Any thoughts on Jeff Driscoll being a person I'm playing? I feel like you would have some more like Jeff Suckskull or something, some sort of snarky Josh remark.
No, so here's the thing. I am a mild Jeff Driscoll fan. I feel like we probably had this conversation before. I don't care about him at all in the NFL right now. That would be silly. I used him a lot in NCAA football in the video game. I used to play with Florida all the time. So I had the entirety of Jeff Driscoll's career. He won 2 national titles for me. I could picture this vividly. Fantastic sophomore year, fantastic junior year. So Jeff Driscoll holds a special place in my heart. I also think that he sucks.
I don't think he sucks. And I do think the Detroit offense can be good enough. Just based on how they approach things, I think they can certainly get some value. And to me at 4,100, and I just liked what I saw from him last year. I don't think Ryan Finley is going to be as good of a backup or as good in the spot as Jeff Driscoll would have been for Cincinnati today. And I think he's feisty, and he did play them into some games. So I think I have 2 or 3 stabs on Jeff Driscoll, and he does open up like the Michael Thomas, Mike Evans kind of duo there, and maybe even McCaffrey. So that's the reason I think he gets to Driscoll, and hope he's competent. Hope he's NCAA football competent.
By the way, shout out to Nick Nelson for noticing that I got a new hat.
Oh, USA basketball supporting America, unlike our players.
Yeah.
Let's see. So here's a fun one from Premium Slack from Elusive Smoke. Can you get the NFL dog picks out of the way? I need to fade Josh's pick across 4 sites and could take a bit of time to update. Elusive Smoke, you win today's show.
I deserve it,
6 minutes, guys. We'll do the 100-yard picks, and then you'll know who to get away from at least a little bit to drop your exposures. 1 week, your guy's going to go nuts, and it'll be hilarious. That'll also be funny.
It won't. It won't. Look, man, this is starting to sting.
I mean, we're past the halfway point of the year. So,
dude, can you imagine if you didn't get a home run until like fucking June?
It would be brutal.
Oh.
Look, I'm glad I'm not on that side of it. That's all I could say.
It's really uncomfortable.
Keep sleeping on Danny. Sparty in the chat says, I don't think anybody's sleeping on Daniel Jones, but
I mean, I'm gonna sleep on that entire city's football situation.
It is, for what it's worth, though, I do think both teams could bring it a bit today in this Battle of New York game, playing the same stadium. Like, you're playing for pride, and I think it's a spot where I could see it. I could see it maybe scoring a bit more, but man, that Jets offensive line just really scared me off last week. Miami just kept sending guys after him. The Giants don't blitz a ton. They don't bring great pressure, but anybody can really get pressure against the Jets right now, and that does spook me a bit, where I'm certainly lower on the field than Darnold than I was last week, where God, that was such a good spot. He just ate shit over and over again.
I'm really not sure that this is like you're playing for pride thing. I don't think that NFL players play for pride if they suck and they still make millions of dollars. Like, I wouldn't be thinking like, gotta beat the Jets.
No,
like,
that's a
gotta play 8 more weeks.
No, like New York, like even when the Mets and the Yankees aren't, like, it's a weird New York thing. I think it's all just like a local team thing. Like the Phillies and
for the fans maybe, but the players don't care.
I think they do.
Nobody cares about local rivalries anymore when you're 1-7 and whatever the hell the other record is.
I don't know. When you're DMing New York girls who follow sports, as many of the athletes are doing out there, and they're talking like, Robbie Anderson's DMing them after a big game, or maybe Golden Tate or him and competing, or Darius Slayton and him are competing for the same girl. That stuff matters. I think it matters enough where I think they could bring it a little bit.
That's the first thing that you've said that I think actually matters. The fact that they want to be able to say that they played well to go out and smash someone out of their Instagram DMs.
Yeah, look, all athlete motivation. No data though. We do not have the Instagram DM factors yet.
I don't. I wish that I did, but unfortunately, I have not been allowed to look through athlete DMs.
I've seen enough, and I've seen enough from girls too. Noah Syndergaard is famous for it, where he used like every single human being in New York who has lady bits was getting hit up by Noah Syndergaard at some point in life. I mean, he was a beast. He was a beast on the DM game. Let's talk about running backs here. Looks like the chalk running back of the week is going to be David Montgomery now. I'm in a spot again. Detroit going to be significantly weakened with no Matthew Stafford out there with broken bones in his back, which sucks because he's been having a hell of a
spinal.
Oh, is it on a spine? Oh,
no, I'm just doing I'm doing the Mike Tyson quote, man. Oh. I broke my back. My back is broke.
Yeah, it makes me sad. I like Stafford quite a bit. He's a guy who's really won me over this year, even though I've been kind of up and down with him, but David Montgomery, in a good spot, getting a lot of touches recently. Has had 2 games over 20 fantasy points out of his last 2. How are you feeling about David Montgomery in a spot where he's going to be chalky, but the price really does work?
On my dummy crunch, I came in like 50% north of the field. So I had like 32. Field is at 22 on FanDuel. He looks good. $6,400 price tag there. That's one of the better value options. There's basically like a group of Marlin Mac, Alvin Kamara, Bell, Montgomery, Saquon, Damian Williams, Balaj, a little bit of McCaffrey, but he is just priced like he's 2 separate people at once. Mm-hmm. That group of like whatever 7 or 8 guys that I just named are going to make up essentially all of my exposure today.
How are you handling McCaffrey? I mean, I assume you said he's taking a lot of exposure, so I have a read on that. But
that's not how I meant that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, explain.
No, I will have shares of Christian McCaffrey. He's not soaking up a ton of exposure. He's 10-5 on FanDuel. Alvin Kamara, for reference, is 8,300. It's really hard to do it. There's just not that much value out there that I think that he is totally viable.
Yeah, not a great value slate, though. I did get some of them. I do have some also with him and Aaron Jones. So I do feel like that's two sides of the run game where they both should really have good days. Carolina's run defense really bad. Also, Green Bay's run defense really bad. The worst run defense that Christian McCaffrey has faced this year, actually, in pretty much every metric. So I did get a little bit of McCaffrey. I think it's tough to get to the Fields amount. The thing is, he could put up 40 fantasy points again, and he would be over a 3x value at that point. So like, there's a lot of risk to not even risk, but there's a lot of your lineups get tougher if you don't have him in there. But still, it is tough at that price point. He just keeps going up, and he probably will go up again after this week.
Yeah, he's so good. He's the one guy on the slate every single week where you're terrified to not have him, because you wouldn't be surprised that every 15 minutes there's a red zone alert, and we go to Carolina where Christian McCaffrey just threw himself an 80-yard touchdown pass.
Yeah, honestly, he is a very talented player who could do that. And Kyle Allen too could come along for the ride, perhaps with McCaffrey. But and he's capable of anything. Wouldn't be surprising if he had a 200-yard day or something and ruin everything anyway. But just from a DFS construction perspective of building your lineups, it is much tougher to get there this week and feel comfortable about it.
Right.
Alvin Kamara, let's hit on him real fast before we get into the 100-yard and the TD picks. Sure. How are you feeling about him? I'm under the field on him because I do think Atlanta's run defense is good enough. That plus Latavius Murray being really competent without him, I think he can take a few touches away. So I'm under the field on Kamara. Though his ownership has come down enough where I'm pretty close to it now. 16% on DK. Where are you shaking out with Alvin Kamara?
I'm essentially double on Kamara right now. On DraftKings, I would probably be even more than that just because of his ability to catch passes. On FanDuel. A little bit less so since it's a half-point PPR, but I'm happy to be there against Atlanta. I'm not really nervous about it. With Breeze back, I just feel like Kamara can thrive either just running the ball and running it down their throat, or just getting out of the backfield and catching 8-9 balls.
Yeah, no, it scares me a little bit to not have as much Kamara as the field, or not even have a ton of Kamara. But I think it's still a situation where I just felt like I couldn't afford him really and get the guys I wanted. So I was willing to get away there and go to Montgomery, go to Singletary. Not so much Kalen Ballage. Somebody asked about in the YouTube or in the premium Slack. I think Kalen Ballage projects well, but I don't see how he has a lot of upside. I'll have the workload, and Indianapolis's run defense isn't that good. But still, I find it hard to believe Ballage is enough to get you there. So I don't know.
I have a little Ballage, nothing too crazy. He's 4% owned on FanDuel, so I think it's a worthwhile flyer at the very least.
All right, let's do the 100-yard and the TD picks. And of course, these are presented by Josh's Misery and Sadness.
Can we not do these by any chance? Do you want to skip it this week?
Never. I never want to skip it ever again. Let me take one quick look at something before I make, I don't want to let you make the pick first.
I don't want to make the pick at all.
All right. You know what? I'll go with the guy I like more as a player, even though it's really close for me. But I'll go Devin Singletary. I think he's in a nice spot. I did like his workload. It scares me that Frank Gore can always emerge from the crypt and take it back away. But it was between him and David Montgomery for me, and I'll go Singletary, even though I feel like it's going to bite me in the ass.
Oh, this is going to be so much fun. I'm doing it again. So last week, I put the stank eye on to Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans had a day. So today, I'm going to put the stank eye on Mike Evans.
Oh, no.
Lock in your Chris Godwin, everybody. Lock him in. Mike Evans, 100 yards and a touchdown. Bam. I hope I just ruined everybody's day. I should have just picked the chalkiest. Is he the chalkiest guy? Because that would be even more fun. Just actively trying to ruin him. No, Godwin more owned.
Yeah.
Slightly.
So
you're
helping the chalk out. Very kind of you to help the people's ownership on Chris Godwin.
You're welcome, everybody. If Mike Evans was your dude today, there it is.
You know who's my dude today? Mike Evans.
Good. Here it comes. Chat's getting it now.
Oh no. All right. Well,
this is great.
Fuck you, Josh. People legitimately mad in the YouTube chat. Look, I think you're gonna get off the snide this week. That's what I'm gonna go with.
I don't think you're right, but I appreciate that.
William Doherty, I hate you. Jason Sullivan, screw you. Josh, EY23, what did this guy just say? BK Nappy, I never comment until this. So many F-bombs. Colin James, I feel like Josh and Chris dislike each other. No, I adore Josh.
No, we happen to be 3,000 miles away, but we would probably go get beers immediately after the show if we weren't.
Yeah, no, it's Josh. Hey, look, I enjoy everybody I do shows with, but Josh is like my buddy. I always enjoy doing our shows. So no, that's factually incorrect, my friend.
We have a comparable sense of humor.
Yeah, and ball busting is what friends do. So that's what we got to do.
For sure. If he had no correct picks through 9 weeks, I would be insufferably jamming that in his face on every single pick. Trust me, we're getting the same satisfaction out of this.
You're kidding me? Yes, you do that to me all the time when I was getting killed in the home run picks.
Oh yeah, for sure. By the way, people think that I'm like slow rolling this and that I really like Godwin and I'm trying to like reverse jinx everything. So now everybody is in like their own heads.
It's a very funny situation. We'll see if EMAC has a pick. He might find it hard to follow up the reaction that you're getting on yours. We'll talk more running backs, but I want to run through some of the premium Slack questions because these are building up. Let's see. Can we, Elusive Smoke got a lot of likes on his comment too, which is great. Dave, our boy Dave, asking in the premium Slack, can you cover Zach Pascal? He's my hot take of the day. I do like Pascal. I don't have as much of him as I would have liked, but Brian Hoyer was my contrarian QB pick of the week. And he is a guy I have some of. Pascal to me is just the last man standing there. There really aren't a lot of wide receivers left. It's him and Chester Rogers running routes. Deion Kane got cut. They called up some guy who I don't think is going to get a lot of work. I could be wrong, but Doyle looks fine. Ebron complained this week. Maybe he gets some more looks, but I think Pascal's role seems pretty secure. The issue to me is I just don't see him getting much more than 5 to 7 targets. And I think on this slate, with Evans, Thomas, Godwin, like these guys are going to get a lot of targets and can smash. So that worries me.
You basically said exactly what I would have said there. We're getting hit with the Josh is a Chinese spy loser again. So working on it, guys. Working on it. Dave, thanks for the super chat. Not necessary. We appreciate it. Sorry I ruined Mike Evans for you today. I have a ton of him. I'm not happy about it either, guys.
Yeah. Also, both my dogs are now in the background, apparently being adorable. So if you want some extra things to watch here besides Josh's sadness, we got that going for. We got a dog feed in the background. Let's see. Like
for real, Mike Evans is my 3rd most exposed wide receiver. I don't know what else to say on that one.
You're not reverse jinxing.
No, I'm just jinxing. Full stop.
Jordan Charles asking, what's good with McCaffrey? If I can get him in with the Jameis Evans stack along with Montgomery and Damian, should I do it? Depends what you're getting for the rest of that, I would say, because if you take crappy value, then no.
Yeah, look, anytime if you have enough money to get to Christian McCaffrey, if someone was like, you probably shouldn't do that, that person is lying. If you can do that, great. I assume you are taking a haircut with someone and hoping that that guy is the guy that makes it happen. So you need to think about how many points you realistically need out of the worst piece of your lineup in order to still have that be a viable GPP option if everything else goes right. If that number isn't 15 plus, then it's probably not the right idea.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of risks that goes along with that. I think there are ways to get there. Like guys like AJ Brown could be worth a little more than he would be otherwise going against Kansas City with no Corey Davis in there. Like he gets an uptick. I think again, Ted Ginn, I think is a value play. It could be interesting. Alex Erickson, if Baltimore's defense doesn't kill them, I think that'd be fine. But Brett missed the 100-yard TD pick. See, well, obviously we saw that Josh is Mike Evans. Brett, mine is Mike Singletary. Mike Singletary. Boy, that would be a tough one. Devin Singletary. Actually, I'll just type it to him too. Why not? All right. Now we're good. Now the tweet can go out. No EMAC though. So EMAC afraid to make a pick, it seems.
It's halftime over yet? It is. Whew. Okay, there we go.
All right. Let's keep going here. All right.
You good?
Yeah, I'm good. The dog, Callie, stop. There you go. Usually I mute the mic if I tell Callie to stop.
Come on, Callie.
Come on, Callie. Get it together, girl. All right. Premium Slack questions. Just want to make sure I hit some of these. EMAC went with David Montgomery. There we go. I missed that.
Okay.
So let me put that in the sheet. All right, we're good. So Emacs picked David Montgomery, mine Devin Singletary, Josh's Mike Evans. So we all know now. All right, let's see if there's any other good questions here. Oh, there we go. Sir Legend thinks this will be your first 100-yard pick because he sent you good juju and vibes. So there you go.
See, that's what happens. I mean, when you send good juju and good vibes, things go well.
Pedrito PR asking, did you like Driscoll on FanDuel? So let's just get that through because we did talk QBs already. Did you like Driscoll at all as potential play on FanDuel?
No, he is not a part of anything that I'm doing.
Okay. Yeah, it's certainly a risky play, but who knows? Who knows how that can go? But one that doesn't seem like a great one to take much volume of. Let me just put this one in. All right. Let's keep talking running backs here. Anybody else? I mentioned I have a lot of Singletary. I have a lot of Montgomery this week. I like their price points. I did get more Damian Jones in there once we got the LeSean McCoy news coming out. I think that just opens things up a little bit more for Williams where you feel more confident in that situation. So those guys need to be the mid-price guys I'm getting the most of. Where are you shaking out with, I guess, the mid-tier of these running backs?
Marlon Mac, a guy that I'm getting a lot of. Le'Veon Bell, a guy that I'm getting a lot of. I don't really like the Le'Veon Bell piece just because I feel like I hate him. He's like the guy that I trust the least. I feel like it's been such a ridiculous fall from grace. Oh, baby, I'm about to go nuts on this stream in call it 30 seconds. So right now on the crunch end, Mac, Bell, Kamara, Montgomery, Williams, Barkley, and Balaj are the guys making up literally 80% of all of my FanDuel running back exposure.
Wow. That's okay. Look, I think that does seem like the move. I mean, it's the move a lot of people are going to make this week. Did Ronald Jones not make the cut for you in that group?
No, he did not. Sorry. Goal Liverpool 3-0. What up, Man City? What up?
Yeah. All of the Man City fans watching this stream are probably going to be really pissed. really, really rubbing their faces in it.
Dude, this is like the greatest day ever.
All right. There's a lot of questions coming in Slack right now.
Bobby Boom, if you're listening, man, let's go Reds.
Running back, anybody else you feel like we need to hit on and bring some people? Nick Chubb, I do think his ownership has come down enough where I'd be intrigued in taking some stabs on him. That Buffalo run defense has gotten worse by the week. They've given up some big games recently. I think he's interesting, and I think people are just afraid of the Kareem Hunt situation, but I don't know that you should be given Chubb's role and how much there was left to go around with Hilliard's role. And I'm trying to think if there's anybody else I have a good amount of. Marlon Mack, I agree with you. Could be a good take there. Certainly a guy who could take production away from Brian Hoyer in that pass attack and just run the ball down Miami's throats. So I don't mind him. And that pretty much covers my exposure. Derrick Henry, I got a little bit of too, just in case they somehow don't get rocked and he can kind of squeeze the air out of the ball. But anything else that you want to hit on at running back?
I have a couple shares of Hunt. I am not going to Nick Chubb. A little nervous about it. So if I'm going to do anything, I'm going to take the shot at the $4,500 guy on FanDuel. Who knows how? I mean, I assume that it doesn't go well, but
okay, that makes sense. Let's run through the wide receivers as well. We've talked about some of them, of course, through the kind of lens of the quarterbacks that we have. But Michael Thomas, the chalk play of the week, I am there. I'm actually above on Michael Thomas, which scares me a bit. But I have enough Ted Ginn in my lineups where if Thomas somehow doesn't get there, I think I have enough leverage on the field where that fails. But I just don't see how he fails here. I mean, Atlanta's really bad against the pass. Thomas projects through the roof in every possible system. I'm on Thomas really heavy. How are you feeling about him?
He's my number one exposed wide receiver.
Okay.
I like being on the same side on that one.
It's like relative to like Godwin and Evans and those guys. How much do you have of him?
That's a really good question. Let me hop back to this here. Close to double Evans at this point. I have 70% Michael Thomas.
Yeah, that's about where I am. So, like it feels risky in football to have a guy like that, but 11 targets a game in this spot versus Atlanta, who gets really killed through the air by pretty much everybody. Almost an 8% passing TD rate allowed by them on the year. It's a really good spot for Michael Thomas. So yeah, I don't see how you get away from him this week.
I'm with you.
Let's see. Anybody? I'm trying to see. Oh man, I'm just jumping around all over the place. Godwin going to be also fairly highly owned. Christian Kirk soaring up the ownership charts on both DraftKings and FanDuel. Yeah. He is the natural run back option for some of the Tampa Bay guys. I do like Kirk. I do think he's the most involved in the passing game, but that's a lot of ownership for Christian Kirk, given that he's had some duds since coming back. Yeah, well, he had one dud since coming back. Where are you with Christian Kirk? Because, man, his ownership is really up.
So I have the wife playing Christian Kirk in the flex spot today in her season long. So I would be remiss to say that I am at least mildly interested in Christian Kirk for those reasons. When it comes to daily fantasy, he is my fourth most exposed wide receiver. $5,700 price tag on FanDuel, really tough to get away from. So he is one of my more owned value plays of the day. Looks really good in Alex's projections. And again, Arizona looks pretty viable as a stack.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that does check out fairly well. I do think Kirk is the best wide receiver out of that group. I do think Andy Isabella, he really should be getting more routes. He should be getting some of those Keyshawn Johnson routes. He should be getting some, I mean, honestly, he should probably be getting some of Larry's routes because Larry has kind of hit a wall, it seems, with his age and whatever his usage and all that. And
it's really funny to call him Larry. Like, I understand that it's his name, but if you call him Larry without saying anything else, I feel like you have to say Fitzgerald because he just doesn't, he's not what you picture when you say Larry.
Yeah, that's fair. I think we're just on a first name basis.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair too. That's fair.
Yeah, like, I mean, I think you just forget that I have all these players in my Rolodex.
Silly me.
Yeah, Josh, get it together. But, I think that Fitzgerald is a perfectly fine play as well. But I do think there are enough worrisome signs with him recently that, maybe he's not quite going to be as sustainable down the stretch here, but we'll find out. But I think Kirk is the clear weapon there, getting almost 9 targets a game. Kirk would be a guy that I'm comfortable with that ownership, but if you want to have some price point pivots around there, DJ Moore, a guy that Alex likes a lot, who comes up a lot when I run Alex's projections on Cruncher, maybe that's a guy you pivot to. But yeah, Kirk seems like he's worth the ownership today. Evans, and we talked about him enough, I think, but Davante Adams coming up a little bit here, underpriced on DK. I'm not sure he's as underpriced everywhere. A bit of a tough matchup going against Carolina secondary, who's done a really good job against all sorts of pass offenses. But Adams is Adams. He's a good player, and he's probably too cheap here, kind of like we saw with Michael Thomas a few weeks ago, where if the guy's just priced down and he's a player of this caliber, might be worth having some shots. Where are you shaking out with Davante Adams?
This is a spot I'm a little nervous about. I do not have much as of right now. A lot of that just has to do with the fact that I'm not getting to any Aaron Rodgers. So by default, I'm losing out on, a decent chunk of potential exposure. I'm naturally going to have more of the wide receivers to the guys that I have quarterbacks for. With Adams at 7,800, I just see it as a little bit easier. I'm getting to more Cooper Kupp in that range, more Chris Godwin, obviously because of Jameis. I think that I would probably prefer Tyreek Hill at $200 more expensive as well. So for right now, I'm under the field on Davante Adams.
Okay.
Doesn't make me comfortable though, because I think he's really good.
Yeah, I am a little bit too. And it does seem like one of those things where like I probably should have taken the price discount because we've seen this, happen enough time. This is what DFS is when guys are priced down, but they're priced down for what they just do every single week. It can be worth going back to them. Zach Ertz last week, not a great matchup at all going against Chicago, but went nuts. I think that's sort of the thing that I'm worried about with Adams, but still, I'd rather have Thomas. I would rather have Evans right now. And that could be the mistake of the week. But I think, Adams is worth the ownership he has. And I'm just not doing it either. So could be a blind spot for both of us. AJ Brown's ownership has come up quite a bit. And obviously he's going to have more opportunity with no Corey Davis out there. And I do think he's a really good player. And the spot versus Kansas City, you need to see some scoring. But I feel like he's not a guy you would land on much of. So where do you shake out with AJ Brown?
I'm basically just neutral to the field. I understand that the opportunity is there. And at 5,500, I think that it's worth he's worth the pay down because of the opportunity, because of Davis not being there. He's not sexy to me. Like I have a comparable amount to him as I do to Calvin Ridley. I have a little bit Marquise Brown in the same price range. Again, that's because of Lamar. It's not, I'm not bringing Tannehill along for the ride. So he's filling out as one of the guys that you can pay down for, but he is not an overwhelming priority for me.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I think he certainly comes with some risk, not the most involved player on the year. Getting targeted on just, he's getting targeted on 20% of his routes, which is fine, but not the highest. But if that takes a jump, certainly can be better. And I do think he is a good yards after catch guy. He gets 2.8 yards after catch above expectation. A very big bodied guy who's hard to bring down. And Kansas City has had some tackling issues on the year. So I don't hate the idea of him. He could certainly have upside, but not a lock play by any stretch. Let's see. Who else are you getting a good amount of at wide receiver so we can kind of close the loop here? Tyreek Hill, a guy I'm a little bit interested in. I got some of him. I did get some Robbie Anderson. I did get some of these guys, but not a ton. Howard and DJ Moore too. I did follow that.
There
Now,
it is. Yeah, I have a lot of DJ Moore.
Okay, well, explain to the people why, because he does seem like a price point guy who's just worth that exposure.
Yeah, 5,800 on FanDuel right now. He comes out as the best wide receiver value on the entire slate for Alex. And that is incredibly valuable to me. I would imagine Alex would be right there with me, given the amount of value. I don't think that 16% ownership, which is what we have for FanDuel right now, is that outlandish for DJ Moore. So he is the guy, along with Christian Kirk, that I am paying down for the most, especially for DJ Moore, in that it's not as if I'm loading up on Kyle Allen or anything like that. He is just easily becoming the value wide receiver that I'm looking for.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's a pivot to Christian Kirk at much less ownership. He's priced really well. He does get deep shots. I do think Curtis Samuel too, which is kind of the one risk to me, is that you could also have Samuel have the big day. Green Bay has given up some of the most deep passes in the league. So Samuel is more of a deep target, but Moore is also certainly involved in getting some looks as well. But I agree. Like, I think he's a good play. He projects well, and can certainly have a big day here against a Green Bay defense that people probably think is a little better than it actually is. Let's see. Anybody else? I mentioned I have some Golden Tate. He's a guy too who I think is worth having some exposure to. Again, assuming that that Jets-Giants game has production. Where'd you get with Cooper Kupp? Because he projects really well from a value perspective. He's not going to be too highly owned, and he's going to have more opportunity with no Brandon Cooks out there. And also, it's a tough spot against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh blitzes a lot. Jared Goff struggles with the blitz, so you're probably going to see him looking to Kupp very often as a safety blanket target. Where'd you shake out with Kupp?
He's a little pricey on FanDuel at 8,100. So I'm basically neutral to the field as of right now. I don't, that's probably going to go up after I finish this second crunch. I've given a little bit of a boost to Goff, so that should naturally bring Cooper Kupp up as well. I didn't get enough Goff, and he looks like a pretty good leverage spot to the ownership right now. Ranks a bit higher in the top stack tool than the ownership is showing. So I'm expecting I had 11% when I first started the show. I'm expecting that to settle in like the 15 to 20% range. So close to 2x the field. And that's basically just because I wanted to get a little bit more of Goff heading into lock.
Yeah. I mean, I think especially knowing what we know now of your Mike Evans pick, he's a pretty logical guy to go to get some exposure, just in case the Evans thing goes south and he has 20 yards today.
Why would the Evans thing go south? I don't understand where you're. What are you alluding to?
I don't know. That's just me being wacky, as I like to do. Don't Embiid my status asking about Russell Gage. I don't have a lot of love for him, but he's another guy I do have a little bit of as a value play. He did pick up all the slot routes that Sanu left behind. He's actually been fairly well targeted when he's getting routes. And Matt Ryan, I mean, who knows how that'll shake out with Matt Ryan, but I do think he's a player who can have some upside. So as a value play, I don't mind him. It's got a 21% target share when he's running routes. So maybe he is a guy who can benefit from the coverage that'll be going to Julio Jones with Lattimore and probably some bracket coverage as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, not a play to have a lot of though. All right, let's see the question. Actually, let's talk tight ends real fast and check in questions too. But who are you getting the most of at tight end on a week that honestly looked kind of crappy across the board?
Got a bit of your boy.
Which one's my boy?
You know which one's your boy. The only one that's good that I would play.
Oh, OJ Howard?
Oh, no. Austin Hooper, man. Come on.
Oh, okay. So that's funny because I'm barely playing him this week.
Oh, well, you don't like him, I guess. Just like I'm the president of the Luca fan club and Adam is nothing but a treasurer. It looks like I'm the president of the Austin Hooper fan club as well. You can be the secretary.
No, that's fair. Look, I brought him to the public when some people who were perhaps on this live stream mocked me to my face about my Austin Hooper love, and now he's really been a week-to-week steady play. I don't think he has the big upside, but yeah, I could see it. I probably should have played more Hooper now that I'm looking at it.
Well, that's your own fight. Maybe if you liked him more.
I went cheaper at tight end this week for a lot of my plays. I went down to Doyle a good amount, or I went up to Kelsey. So I did have Hooper is a bit of a blind spot for me.
Kelsey's the other guy that I have like staggering amounts of. The rest of the guys are just if it works out for a particular lineup, but Kelsey and Hooper are essentially all of my volume.
Yeah, Kelsey. So I heard it on
the Grapevine.
Al Seinfeld on the whatever their podcast is. I forget the DFS Edge, the one that Levitan and Seinfeld and the other dude Peter Jennings does. And I think they did point out one thing, which I just hadn't noticed, but Kelsey's been getting 1.4 targets per game in the red zone and has no catches and no touchdowns in the red zone, which just seems bizarre. That's not how he plays. That's not obviously his usual catch rate. So that's due for some positive regression. And going against Tennessee, not a bad tight end matchup. I like Kelsey at his price point. He just seems like he's due to have a bigger week than he's had.
I mean, I've been playing like a stupid amount of Travis Kelce every week, and it's been burning me every week. So I'm just kind of hoping that at some point in time we can get our shit together and it just works out.
Yeah, it's one of those weeks too where, I mean, look, it's always a situation for Kansas City where they could just go elsewhere. They have like 4 guys who are viable, and then also Mahomes will throw it to the fifth like wide receiver sometimes just because that's what he can do and that's how he sees the field. But Kelsey just seems like he's due for better days, getting 8 targets a game on a week where tight ends are crappy. You know, you're right. Like the volume for Hooper, the volume for Kelsey, that is something you can trust rather than OJ Howard making something out of his, 3 targets a game. Like that's just, it's a little bit risky there. Even Doyle, honestly, like Doyle had played pretty well last week, but he's only got 4 targets a game. I think he had 5 last week. Like he really hasn't been the high volume guy he was for Andrew Luck. So I'm playing Doyle, but I think he's a little bit riskier than I'm probably treating it. And a lot of people are probably treating it. And that's the time to go to Kelsey and hope that he has that big Kelsey day.
Yeah. I have 80% of my exposure going to Kelsey and Hooper right now.
Don't Abide My Status asking Julio or Hooper on FanDuel. Who would you choose out of those 2 if you had to go with a Falcon, presumably for running it back?
Oh man. At least the question is on FanDuel. So I would say Hooper.
Yeah, I would take Cooper too. I think at that price point for Julio, there's enough guys you might want to go to instead, especially because Julio is Julio can do anything. He can go nuts today. It wouldn't be surprising, but Marshawn Lattimore has been really improved after that early stretch of the year where he just played terribly. And I think he'll get up for the spot. And I think they'll also just send more guys at Julio and let somebody else beat him. So I would go to Hooper.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, Julio Love, we just answered that. Just looking at the YouTube chat for questions too. Gesicki is a lock in cash. I do think Gesicki, I probably should have it a little bit more. He's far from a lock in anything. He's running more routes out of the slot, which is going to be better for him. But I think he's very much a tournament play. I would not say he's a lock in cash by any stretch.
That sounded really ridiculous to me, so I don't want to comment until I double check this, but that sounds like a very, very, very untrue statement just on the surface. Let me double check just to make sure I'm not crazy.
According to Alex, he is the best value at tight end for whatever that's worth, but
okay.
But only a projection.
A 3,100. I wouldn't say that he is a lock for cash because of who he is, but he is definitely one of the viable tight end cash options. I did not realize he was 3,100.
Yeah, no, he's cheap and he is the best value tight end on the board. I would find Doyle to be a bit safer, but let me just take a quick look at Gesicki just to see what he's running route wise. So last week he ran 29 routes, targeted 6 times for 95 yards. I mean, look, the targets and the yards per route look good, and his target share overall has been pretty good. And again, I do like him running out of the slot. Yes, target share on the year, they're not that high, 15.1% when running routes. So that could be a bit of an aberration game. I don't know. I get it. I don't think I would say he was a lock by any stretch. I mean, nobody's ever a lock for the most part, but especially a crappy tight end. Rinpack asking, will I cry if Mike Thomas busts today? I don't cry about anything, but I will certainly be kicking some rocks dejectedly down the street.
Yeah.
I
will cry probably.
I will just dust myself off and redeposit for the afternoon slate and hope that something goes better in life.
Can't beat that.
Let's see. People doing some fake news in the YouTube chat. Always fun. Oh no, even better.
Yeah, that one wasn't fake news.
Justin Swearingen, thank you for the super chat. First of all, asking Ridley or Ginn last man in a FanDuel GPP. It would be Ginn for me out of those 2.
Ridley or Ginn. I'm almost Ridley for sure.
Yeah, no,
I don't have any Ginn.
For a GPP, I would go to Ginn because I do think it's a spot where Atlanta has been beaten so many times in the past. But for cash, I would think Ridley's a safer play. But I would take that. I'd take that dice toss. Yeah, people in the YouTube chat not enjoying that. Yeah, don't please racial slurs. Fucking 2019. Don't be a dipshit. So worthless. All right.
That's YouTube chat for you.
Anything else you want to hit on? Oh, defense is real fast. Any defenses you got a lot of? I ended up with a lot of Browns, which I hate going against.
They are my number one.
Okay. They're the best value play on the slate, I think, by a pretty decent margin.
Browns and Colts.
Okay. Yeah. Colts too. Not bad. Bears, I don't mind either now that we know that. I did play some Ravens too, just because that total's really high. And I was playing that more thinking that Lamar falls short and then perhaps they get defensive touchdowns. I don't mind if you can afford them, but on this slate, it is tough to find 4K for a defense on DraftKings.
Yeah.
But I played a little bit of it.
2 minutes to go. 1 minute to go.
Oh man. So get your lineups in, guys. Get those final run of lineups that you need in all your things industry wide. I'm looking for any good questions. People, I don't even know what they're talking about in the NFL. Let's go. What is this lineup in our premium Slack? Like, who are these running backs, wide receivers?
I have no idea.
I don't even know. Very good.
College?
Maybe. That might be it.
I mean, it's college.
We still have an hour, right? No, you do not still have an hour. Odell Beckham breakout. Do you have any Odell this week? Because I did get a little bit of him. The Siege yesterday on the contrary was very big on Odell as his contrarian pick of the week.
I don't think that I have any. Sorry, Fields.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. It's certainly logical to not have any of them given the situation. But yeah, all right, I'm checking for anything else here. No, good question.
Oops,
what were your
Kalen
Balage's take one more time for all the Kalen Balazs aficionados out there? How'd you shake out with him?
I have more than I'm comfortable with. I'm like 2 or 3 times the field as of right now.
Okay. I have less than the field right now, and that's makes me happy. So
I get it.
Yeah.
Look, the field is at 5% on FanDuel, so.
Yes. So that is not a spot I want to be on too much. I don't want, I'm relying on some guys who will sink me. If Kalen Balazs sinks my lineups, I would be the most sad, just knowing what we know of him.
For sure. Yeah.
All right, guys.
Beat it, Aguero.
We are locked, guys. So hit that like button, hit that lock button and that like button right now. And also thank you as always to Fantasy Draft. Go to fantasydraft.com right now. Hooters main event is closed for the week, but it'll be back next week. And they have a ton of tournaments every single day. No rake on that site. All the contest entry fees go to the winners. So go to fantasydraft.com and use the promo code AWESOMO for your free 7-day trial. And also if you're going to be tilting whatever things that we've done wrong, building our lineups, get in there now at awesemo.com/join to get the ownership projections and player projections for the afternoon slate. There could be some good games going on later today. Some interesting ones that honestly, you're going to have McCaffrey, you're going to have that Aaron Jones spot. So go to that right now. Go to awesemo.com/join. Use that promo code live before lock for half off your first month. And Josh, what do you want to plug for the folks while we go watch football?
I want to plug, well, first of all, watch Live Before Lock with Eddie and Emac tonight. But
of course.
And the Vikings Cowboys Live Before Lock with Emac and Eric. But I want to plug Liverpool 3-0, Manchester City, 71 minutes in. Ale.
Go Liverpool. They'll never walk alone thanks to you, Josh. And thank you, all of you guys out there. You'll never walk alone either because we will be here for you guys every single slate that you need us. So we'll see you guys again soon. Wish you guys all the best of luck in week 10. And I guess I just said that part. So good luck again.